Chapter 3242. Lien Shuerong let out a tender shout and rushed towards this behemoth. She brandished the long whip in her hand and lashed at the giant elephant. Pow! The whip struck the bottom of the elephant's foot. A golden light flashed, and the elephant let out a pained roar. Its foot slid down and stepped on the ground. Boom! The ground shook violently like a carpet shaking. A demonic beast of the blood transformation tier. Ling Han took a look and immediately concluded. That boiling qi and blood was extremely shocking, revealing its ferocity, causing all the warriors' faces to turn pale. Just standing was a huge burden. Lien Shuerong roared once more and lashed out with her whip. Not only was this elephant at the blood transformation realm, it was also extremely large. As long as it stepped on you, its destructive power would be incomparably terrifying. The elephant swung its long trunk at Lien Shuerong. It was like a tall building was smashing towards her. Lien Shuerong leapt up. She could no longer change her trajectory and could only face the elephant head-on. Bang! She pressed out with her palm and was sent flying into the distant demonic beast horde. On the other hand, the elephant only trembled slightly. Its shocking size had already proved its worth. To send it flying would probably require a peak bone realm expert. This was the reason why demonic beasts were said to be stronger than martial artists of the same realm. Flag Master! The Black-Green Banner's warriors all shouted. Flag Master Lien is fine. Everyone follow me, shouted Ling Han. Lien Shuerong was at the third blood transformation, and even if she wasn't a match for the elephant, she could easily escape. But if they didn't leave, they would only be trampled to death by the elephant. Let's go! Lien Shuerong's voice rang out from the distance. When everyone heard this, they felt relieved and hurriedly ran away. But in this kind of environment, how could they possibly run so fast? In just a few breaths of time, the giant elephant had already made a comeback and stomped down with its foot. It was like the heavens were collapsing, extremely terrifying. Ling Han had no choice but to leap high into the air and then deliver a punch. Bang! This punch landed solidly, and Ling Han only felt as if the entire celestial body was crushing him. His chest felt like it was boiling, and it was extremely uncomfortable. This was after he had released his strength. Otherwise, if he had been directly stepped on by this foot, he would have been 10 times more miserable. His body fell down, and he barely managed to turn his body so that his feet touched the ground first. His legs wobbled and he almost fell on his butt. Fortunately, the giant elephant was also slightly deflected by his punch. Pung! The giant foot landed 3 zhang away from them, setting off a strong shock wave that caused the nearby people and demonic beasts to be thrown off their feet. Brother Ling! The other warriors hurriedly called out. Ling Han waved his hand and said, I'm fine. He activated the broken sword in his hand and slashed out. Suddenly, a not-so-fancy sword qi slashed towards the elephant. Puff! The sword qi pierced into the elephant's calf, and then a spray of blood sprayed out. The elephant's pained cry was incomparably loud, shaking the surroundings. The broken sword was an enchanted tool, and its level was extremely high. So although the sword qi it had sent out didn't have much power, its sharpness was incomparably shocking, and it caused great damage to the elephant. Boom! The elephant wildly waved its trunk in pain. Pung, pung, pung. Its trunk crushed the ground, and immediately dozens of demonic beasts were smashed to death, turning into bloody mist. This caused the Black-Green Banner warriors to shiver. If they had been smashed by the elephant's trunk, they would definitely have suffered the same result. Let's go! Sun Jianfang jumped out. He led the way at the front, with Ling Han bringing up the rear. Although he had only just stepped into the blood transformation realm, he was still the third strongest expert in the group. Now that Lien Shuerong was charging over from the distance, he had no choice but to take over as the vanguard. The elephant went berserk. It didn't care about the consequences, trampling everywhere it went. It was practically the best example of a pig-headed ally. In just a few steps, hundreds of demonic beasts had been trampled to death. Its efficiency was astonishing. Ling Han couldn't help being delighted. If this elephant was used well, it could completely become a super-killing weapon to quell the beast tide. But before he could be happy for long, the elephant inconceivably calmed down. Its eyes flashed with a bloody light as it stared at him. The elephant raised its trunk high, and then viciously smashed it towards Ling Han. It was a blood transformation realm demonic beast, and its body was enormous. Its brute strength was astonishing, and adding on its skyscraper-like trunk, its destructive power would probably cause even the ultimate bone realm to frown. If he wanted to kill this demonic beast, he would have to avoid facing it head-on. He would have to kill his way through its eyes and ears, directly destroying its brain. Otherwise, even the ultimate bone realm would have to spend a great deal of effort to deal with it. "Spread out," shouted Ling Han. He did his best to block this hole. Bang! His entire body was sent flying. A million gene of strength was indeed very powerful, but against this elephant, it only caused its trunk to tremble slightly. The black-green banner warriors immediately scattered like birds and beasts. If they continued to stay together, they would only die a slow death. But even so, this swipe of its trunk still sent 7 warriors flying. Before they even landed, they had already stopped breathing. Damn it! Ling Han roared in fury. He brandished the broken sword and continuously shot out sword chi. Pew, 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 pew. The huge size of the giant elephant was an advantage, but at the same time, it had also become a huge target. It was practically unable to dodge any attacks. Pew, 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 pew. The sword chi continuously slashed into the body of the giant elephant, causing it to bellow in pain. However, this time, it did not lose control. Instead, its eyes became even more bloodshot and savage as it stared fixedly at Ling Han. On the other side, Lian Xuerong had already charged over and was currently regrouping the troops. Ling Han relaxed slightly. He gave a loud roar and said, "I'll go kill this giant elephant." Xiao, his figure sprang up, and with a leap, he had already leapt onto one of the huge elephant's legs. This huge elephant's leg hair was like multiple long spears, thick, hard, and long. Ling Han used it as a flight of stairs, and as he repeatedly stepped on it, he quickly headed towards the huge elephant's head. Although the elephant was an extremely obvious target, if he wanted to kill it, he had to use sword chi from its eyes and ears. If he stood below it, it would be very difficult to hit it. Furthermore, the elephant wasn't stupid. Its large body was indeed difficult to dodge, but it only needed to tilt its head slightly. Thus, Ling Han had to go up. Shio, shio, shio. In just a few moments, Ling Han had already appeared on one of the elephant's tusks. Just as he was about to slash at its eyes, he suddenly felt his mind go into a trance, as if something was trying to replace him. The purple pendant glowed faintly, and Ling Han's spiritual energy was also counterattacking. Boom! This evil will was expelled from his knowledge sea. Ling Han was shocked. He raised his head to look up, and saw that there was actually a demonic beast sitting on the elephant's head. It looked like a tiger, but it was hairless. However, its entire body was covered with foot-long tentacles. This was the demonic beast of the Thousand Lotus Mountain that was proficient in mind control. So it was it that controlled the elephant. Chapter 3244. Peng, with a single punch, the spiritual-type demonic beast instantly exploded. Ling Han's punch contained 20 layers of power. How terrifying was that? He heaved a sigh of relief, only to feel a strong wave of fatigue wash over him. Battling a spiritual-type demonic beast not only exhausted his body, but also his spirit. Now that the battle was over, his spirit relaxed, and he wanted nothing more than to lie down and sleep. However, the death of a spiritual-type demonic beast did not affect the battle in the slightest. The beast tide was still there, wreaking havoc and slaughtering in the city. The screams of the humans were endless. Buildings collapsed, and fires were everywhere. Was this still Hidden Tiger City? It was practically hell. If there was anything that had changed, it would be that the ferocious beast had turned around and flown away, no longer attacking him. Ling Han frowned. It seemed that there was far more than one spiritual-type demonic beast. Thus, even if he killed one, it did not affect the overall situation at all. How was he going to deal with this? Killing a spiritual-type demonic beast had almost caused him to collapse from exhaustion. If he encountered another one, he would definitely be sending himself to his death. He could only hope that the ultimate Bone Realm practitioners in the city would show their might. However, looking at the current situation, the ultimate bone realm practitioners could only protect themselves. At most, they could escort a few people away. It was impossible for them to let all the citizens of the city retreat safely. Moreover, Ling Han's eyes narrowed. He saw a super demonic beast with a wingspan of at least 300 meters. It was flying in the sky and had 2 snake heads. There was no fur on its wings, but rather, they were made of leather. It also had a long tail that was almost 300 meters long. Such a huge creature flying in the sky was like a spaceship. It was its existence that rendered the air power of Hidden Tiger City useless. Any spaceship could be easily destroyed by its claws. It could even spit out corrosive liquid from its mouth, causing the spaceship to rapidly disintegrate in the air. Of course, the people on the spaceship would all fall to their deaths. Even if they did not fall to their deaths, they would still be corroded to death by the acid. This was definitely not the blood transformation realm, but the ultimate bone realm. Since it could fly in the air, it could be said that it was born to be invincible. Even other ultimate bone stage powerhouses could only stare at it and sigh. Could a human fly in the air? Other than this bird king, there were many other demonic beasts that were as large as elephants. They were all at the blood transformation realm, and with their large bodies, they could almost be used as ultimate bone realm experts. There were more than 20 of these giant demon beasts, and with their rampage, Crouching Tiger City seemed to have been built with sand and stones, and it quickly fell apart. Ling Han sighed. No wonder Cha De Yuan and the little old man were so confident, thinking that the Hidden Tiger City was destined to suffer a calamity. Indeed, how could the power of the Hidden Tiger City be able to resist such a terrifying beast tide? Vile beasts! A loud roar rang out, and Feng Zixing appeared on top of the tallest building in the city. He held a large bow in his hand, and Xiao, a cold golden light shot out, shooting towards a greater demon. This was the attack of a ultimate bone stage powerhouse. With a flash of golden light, it entered the eye of a giant gorilla, and then directly flew out from the back of its head. Ang! That giant gorilla let out an angry roar, and began to roll on the ground, crushing one house after another. It was also unknown how many demonic beasts and humans had been crushed, and most of them were directly turned into meat paste. There was also a small portion that did not die, and they let out blood-curdling screams. Fortunately, this giant gorilla was only struggling on its deathbed, and very soon, it stopped moving. As expected of a ultimate bone stage powerhouse, the #1 expert of Hidden Tiger City, he was able to kill such a powerful demonic beast with a single arrow. Feng Zixing used the same trick again, and another arrow shot out. Xiao, a golden light shot out, and it was incredibly fast. Just as it was about to kill a supergiant hippopotamus, a liquid sprayed over, annihilating the golden light. In the sky, a cry rang out, and that bird king flapped its wings and charged towards Feng Zixing. It was it that had attacked just now, and it had spat out a stream of acid, which had dissolved Feng Zixing's attack. The two powerful experts began an intense battle, and it was difficult to determine who was superior in a short time. However, there were still countless demonic beasts in the city. Just the supergiant beasts alone numbered close to 20, and there were also a large number of ordinary blood transformation stage demonic beasts. This was still a force that could cause one to despair. More importantly, who knew how many spiritual-type demonic beasts there were here? That was the most terrifying thing. Ling Han clenched his teeth and first slashed apart that spiritual-type demonic beast, taking away the blood god crystal inside. Then, with a flip of his body, he had already landed on top of the elephant's tusk. Then he shot out a ray of sword chi towards the elephant's eye. Pooh! The sword chi was unstoppable, and one of the elephant's eyes immediately exploded, and a large amount of liquid sprayed out. Ling Han slashed out again, blinding the elephant's other eye. However, this was all he could do at the moment. The elephant's skin was really too thick, and he was unable to slash into its brain. Unless Ling Han crawled in through the hole in the elephant's eye and attacked from an even closer distance. Forget it, without both of its eyes, this elephant could only cause trouble blindly, trampling even more demonic beasts to death. The elephant was in pain, and crazily swayed its body, entering a berserk state. Ling Han grabbed the tusk with one hand, and at the same time, searched for the whereabouts of Huan Shui, Sun Jianfang, and the others. Under the attack of this beast tide, the Black-Green Banner's warriors had long since been scattered. Ling Han very quickly found Huan Shui's tracks. She was currently together with Sun Jianfang. The two of them were currently in a very bad situation. After all, Sun Jianfang was only at the first blood transformation. It was already difficult enough for him to be surrounded by 10 or so 12 meridian demonic beasts, but there were far more than 10-12 meridian demonic beasts here. Ling Han let out a long howl and climbed down from the elephant's back. Then he charged towards Huan Shui and Sun Jianfang. Peng, peng, peng. He punched out, and under the powerful shockwave, the demonic beasts in front of him were immediately sent flying. In just a few steps, Ling Han had arrived in front of Huan Shui and Sun Jianfang. "Young master!" Huan Shui cried out in surprise. Just now, when she saw Ling Han charging towards the elephant, she had been extremely nervous. Just looking at that size was enough to make one suffocate. Ling Han swept a glance over, and the corner of his mouth involuntarily twitched. Even in such a situation, Huan Shui was actually still hugging that perverted pig. "Retreat," he said in a low voice. It was already impossible to do anything. The scale and strength of the beast tide had far exceeded their expectations. The only thing they could do now was to charge out of Hidden Tiger City. The three of them began to break out of the encirclement, but they did not charge too far. Ling Han felt that the secret power in his body was being used up too quickly. If he continued to use it like this, it would only be a matter of 10 or so minutes at most before he would definitely be exhausted. "Enter the house," said Ling Han. The three of them hid in a house that was still in good condition. With such shelter, they immediately had some breathing space. However, good times did not last long. With a bang, a wall was forcefully smashed into pieces, and a demonic beast about 6 meters long charged in. Although it was not large in size, it was impressively also in existence at the blood transformation realm. A demonic beast's realm could not be measured by its size. However, a demonic beast with a large size was usually a bit more powerful, surpassing others of the same level. "Let me." Sun Jianfang stepped forward bravely. He knew that Ling Han had used up too much energy and needed to conserve it. End of chapter. Chapter 3245. Slap. The demonic beast sent Sun Jianfang flying with a single slap. This demonic beast was at the third transformation. Sun Jianfang crashed heavily into the wall. His entire body sank into it, as if he was embedded in it. Luckily, the blood transformation realm wasn't this bad. He was only dizzy and had blood at the corner of his mouth. Ling Han raised his sword and was about to attack when he heard the little pink pig roar. This was a genuine pig's cry. But strangely, the demonic beast suddenly paused and looked at the pig. Its eyes flickered as if it was hesitating about something. The little pink pig roared again. The demonic beast immediately turned around and ran away with its tail between its legs. Ling Han was shocked. How scared was it to run away with its tail between its legs? The moment the pig roared, a blood transformation realm demonic beast ran away in fear. Ling Han looked at the pig again. It was currently making faces at him, looking as if it was asking him if he was super awesome. Other than having an unbreakable defense, this pig could also intimidate other demonic beasts? Could it be a spiritual-type demonic beast? Damn pig, I've really underestimated you. Ling Han grabbed the perverted pig. If you had such an ability, why didn't you use it sooner? The pig spread out its 2 front paws, which meant that you didn't ask me. Ling Han nodded. It seemed that the little handmaiden's safety in the beast tide was not only because of Sun Jianfang, but also because of this pig. "Come, open the way." He took the lead. "Goo goo." The little pink pig squeaked. It didn't want to be carried by Ling Han like this. It needed a beauty to hug it. But its defense was unbreakable, and it could scare away blood transformation realm demonic beasts. But its battle strength was only 5. It couldn't be any worse, so it could only squeak in vain. However, it was really effective. Ling Han carried the little pink pig and led the way. When the demonic beasts that were charging over saw them, they all stopped in their tracks, growled at Ling Han a few times, then turned around and ran. Ling Han wanted to fetch Lian Xuerong, Mo Guahao, and the others, but it was a mess now. All he could do was wait for the people around him. Moreover, he always felt that this pig wasn't telling the truth. Right now, it could intimidate the other demonic beasts, but who knew that it would suddenly become ineffective after a while? Let's go. He decided to leave the city. This was a dangerous place and he couldn't stay for long. With the little pink pig as a deterrent, the three of them didn't encounter any obstacles along the way, and they smoothly retreated to the outskirts of the city. A miserable shriek rang out. It was like a clap of thunder that resounded throughout the entire city. Ling Han turned around to take a look, and his expression became solemn. The outcome of the battle between Feng Zixing and the Bird King had already been decided. Feng Zixing's chest had been pierced by the Bird King's claws, causing him to spurt out blood. Although he wasn't dead yet, it was clear that he wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. It was over. Even Feng Zixing had died. Who else could stop that Bird King? Quick! Ling Han turned around and dashed forward without hesitation. Gradually, the roars of the beasts around the three of them became softer and softer, and finally disappeared completely. They ran out of the city and arrived at a riverside. They stopped and looked back. The entire hidden tiger city had already turned into a sea of fire. Even from such a distance, they could still see the silhouettes of those giant demonic beasts. After resting for a while, they walked along the river for a long distance before finally stopping to truly rest. The long night passed and the sun rose from the east. The three of them woke up one after another. Only that perverted pig was still sleeping soundly in Huanshue's arms, drooling everywhere. I really didn't expect that such a calamity would happen. Sun Jianfang sighed. Ling Han, however, knew that this wasn't a natural disaster, but a man-made disaster. However, what he didn't understand was how that mysterious organization was able to control those spiritual-type demonic beasts. Logically speaking, it should be the spiritual-type demonic beasts that were controlling them. Ling Han didn't explain to Sun Jianfang. This mysterious organization seemed to be extremely powerful, and it was better not to drag Sun Jianfang into this. Moreover, he had been poisoned and hadn't solved this problem yet. Ling Han suddenly raised his head. He heard the sounds of battle coming from ahead of him, and it was currently approaching his direction. He thought for a moment and said, "Let's hide first and observe the situation." Sun Jianfang and Huanxue both nodded. The three of them hid in the bushes by the riverside. They were densely packed, and if one didn't look carefully, it would be impossible to find them. In just a short while, two people ran over. One of them suddenly staggered and fell to the ground. "Uncle Mu! Uncle Mu!" The other person cried out in alarm, his voice filled with panic. Ling Han was astonished. These two people were actually Butler Mu and Feng Ruoxian. Were they being chased by demonic beasts? Ling Han had taken Butler Mu's shuttle steps and felt that he owed the other party a favor. Thus, he decided to bring that perverted pig out to chase away the demonic beasts. Of course, he wasn't sure if that perverted pig could scare off an extreme bone realm demonic beast. However, if he didn't step out bravely, it would become a thorn in his heart that would forever be there. There were things a man should and shouldn't do. Right now, he definitely wouldn't be a coward. However, before he could rush out, he saw another person appear. It was a white-haired old man. Who can? Ling Han was stunned. The pursuer was actually Who Can. Or could it be that he was actually also a fugitive, just that he was a step slower than Butler Mu and the others? Run, continue running. Who Can laughed coldly. He stared at Butler Mu and then glanced at Feng Ruoxian. His expression was very crazy. What was going on? The 5 blood transfusion Who Can was actually chasing the extreme bone realm Butler Mu? Ling Han looked carefully at Butler Mu and came to a sudden realization. It turned out that Butler Mu's abdomen had a deep wound that was constantly bleeding. He had only fallen for a short while, and there was already a pool of blood on the ground. He was seriously injured. No wonder he wasn't Who Can's match. However, why was Who Can chasing after Butler Mu? Could it be that he didn't know Feng Zixing? That's right, Feng Zixing had already died in the city. Who Can, you're just a dog. Do you have the right to bark in front of me? Butler Mu barely managed to support his body. If you weren't injured and still maintained the battle strength of the extreme bone realm, then even if you humiliated me greatly, I would still swallow my anger, Hukan said proudly. However, who asked you to be seriously injured now? You didn't expect this, did you? The day before yesterday, you were still so impressive and ruthlessly humiliating me. But now, you've already fallen into my hands. The heavens have really opened their eyes. Butler Mu was cold. After a moment of silence, he said, since it's a grudge between you and me, then let Miss leave. Don't make decisions so recklessly. Hukan waved his hand. If there's no one to admire from the side, how boring would that be? Miss should stay. Butler Mu's expression changed, and he said, if Miss saw you kill me with her own eyes, would you still let her live? Oh, that's right. Hukan suddenly clapped his hands, revealing a look of sudden realization. Then there's no other way. I can only make Miss shut her mouth forever. Chapter 3246. Ling Han was shocked. Hearing Hukan's words, not only did he want to kill Butler Mu, he didn't even want to let Feng Ruoxian off. But although Feng Zixing was dead, he was still a governor, ruling over a city and a region. Furthermore, he had died with the city. Xianbei country would definitely hold him up as a hero, a role model, and spread the news widely. If Hukan dared to harm Feng Ruoxian, then he would naturally become the public enemy of Xianbei country. Unless he silenced him. Was there a need for that? Butler Mu's expression changed greatly, and he said darkly, if you dare have any ill intentions towards Miss, even if I die, I will kill you. Alright, Butler Mu, don't scare people. Hukan waved his hand and said, but, it looks like the rumors are true. He smiled and said unhurriedly, everyone says that you were saved by Feng Zixing, and then repaid his kindness, and willingly became a slave. But I don't believe it. There are many ways to repay kindness. A pinnacle realm practitioner needs to be a slave to repay kindness. There's a rumor that Butler Mu admired Madame Feng Zixing and was deeply in love with her. That's why he was willing to become a slave, so that he could see his beloved day and night. Now I really believe this rumor. Hearing him finish, Butler Mu instantly revealed an indescribable expression, as if he was reminiscing, and also as if a painful memory had been evoked. Uncle Mu. This was the first time Feng Ruoxian had heard of such a thing, and she couldn't help but widen her eyes. But there was a voice in her heart that told her that this should be true, because Butler Mu treated her even better than her own father. No matter what request she had, he would agree to it. Especially after her mother passed away, Butler Mu would often look at her in a daze. Now that she thought about it again, it was very clear that this was Butler Mu reminiscing about her deceased mother. Ling Han was also shocked. No wonder Butler Mu was so concerned about Feng Ruoxian's matters, and felt that he was even closer to her than Feng Zixing. So there was such a relationship. It looks like the rumors are true. Hukan shook his head and said, Butler Mu, if you don't want anything to happen to Miss, come, crawl over my crotch. This was a blatant humiliation. As long as one had some dignity, they would not accept such humiliation. After Steward Mu looked at Feng Ruoxian, he said without hesitation, all right. Ling Han wanted to rush out. How could he let Butler Mu suffer such humiliation? Nowadays, there weren't many lovers like him. But before he could stand up, he saw Hukan shake his head and say, forget it, this is too dangerous. If Steward Mu climbs under me and suddenly gives me a blow, I won't be able to block it. Steward Mu's face couldn't help but change. He actually had this idea. He did not believe that Hukan would let Feng Ruoxian go, so the safest method was to kill Hukan to ensure Feng Ruoxian's safety. Hukan thought about it and said, I've thought of another idea. He smiled and said, when the beast tide came, everyone in the Hu clan died except for me. Therefore, I want to marry the eldest young lady to make my Hu clan's bloodline flourish. Steward Mu, what do you think of this idea? He chuckled. If I marry the eldest young lady, of course I will respect her and love her. Steward Mu will not have to worry that I will harm her, right? Fuck, this old bastard. Feng Ruoxian couldn't help but shake her head. Hu Kan's hair and beard were all white. Who knew how old he was? When she thought of being affectionate with such a person, she wanted to vomit. She would rather die than marry such a terrible old man. Steward Mu's expression became incomparably dark. He said darkly, "Hu Kan, do you really want to die? Anyway, the Hu clan only has me left, a lone commander. What is there for me to be afraid of?" Hu Kan grinned. "These years, I have been busy with cultivation and have not enjoyed any good fortune. The beast tide this time has allowed me to see things clearly. One must enjoy life to the fullest." Steward Mu didn't speak. He was extremely anxious. His injuries were far more severe than Hu Kan had imagined. Otherwise, he would definitely risk his life. Most importantly, he couldn't risk his life even if he wanted to. What to do? What to do? Cold sweat rolled down his face uncontrollably. This was the only flesh and blood Yen had left in the world. He saw her as his own daughter. Even if his body was crushed, he would not let Feng Ruoxin be harmed in the slightest. Steward Mu isn't saying anything. It seems that he has agreed. Hu Kan laughed loudly. He slowly walked forward. He was extremely careful, afraid that Steward Mu would trick him and purposefully show weakness. In reality, he wanted to give himself a swift blow. "Old man Hu, I really couldn't tell that you are already so old, yet you still want to harm a young lady." A light sigh came from the bushes nearby. Hu Kan was instantly shocked. He had been careful in the first place. Steward Mu didn't stop anywhere else, but he just had to fall here. He was naturally on his guard. Now that he heard a fourth person's voice, he felt as if he was facing a great enemy. "Who is it?" he shouted. "Sneaking around, not daring to come out and meet people? We're old friends. Don't you recognize me?" Ling Han walked out with large strides. "It's you." Hu Kan's eyes immediately turned red when he saw him. Originally, he would not have been the only one in the Hu family who could have escaped danger. At least, Hu Chaoxing and Hu Ronghai, these two at the blood-changing realm, would have had a chance of escaping. But Hu Chaoxing had only changed and was injured by Ling Han. Although Hu Ronghai was slightly stronger, his arms were completely crippled. How could he have withstood the beast tide? So, now that he saw Ling Han, Hu Kan's eyes turned red. If not for his relationship with Ling Han, he would not have been left alone. Ling Han. Steward Mu was overjoyed. He had not expected to meet Ling Han here. His spirits rose and he straightened his upper body. He said, "Take the young lady and leave. I will hold this person back." Ling Han waved his hand and said, "Steward Mu, this old man is guilty of the most heinous crimes. It's better to kill him." Steward Mu was speechless. Of course, he also wanted to kill Hu Kan, but the problem was that he was already at the end of his rope. And Ling Han could at most barely resist Hu Kan. How could he kill him? Hu Kan laughed coldly. "I didn't expect to meet you here, you unfilial son. Good. No one will come to save you today. Come fight." Ling Han charged out. His right hand waved the broken sword, but his left hand was hidden in his clothes. Hu Kan did not dare to be careless. He saw that Ling Han's clothes were bulging. He did not know what he was hiding, so he was naturally very careful. He waved his sword to meet the attack, but his left hand was slightly open. He was on guard against Ling Han's big move at any time. But Ling Han still did not take his hand out. He became even more careful. Was he holding back some big move? After a few moves, he became impatient. His sword suddenly became swift and fierce. Ling Han let out a soft shout and finally extended his left hand. Instantly, a pig squealed. Chapter 3248. Wishful Thinking. Hu Kan laughed coldly. "Today I will kill all of you." Ling Han and Butler Mu were the main culprits who had caused the Hu clan to lose face. Today was a good opportunity to kill them all. Bam bam bam. The battle between the two became more and more intense. Ling Han had been on guard against Hu Kan's outburst. The power of the 5 changes of blood transformation suddenly increased by more than 2 times. That destructive power was absolutely terrifying. But Hu Kan was extremely calm, and his blood chi did not boil all this time. "Ling Han, don't worry about his boiling blood chi," Butler Mu said, panting. Previously, he relied on boiling blood qi to aggravate my injuries. At least within 3 hours, he won't be able to explode again. So that was how it was. Ling Han nodded. No wonder Hu Ken, although he was furious, did not explode. Old man, so you no longer have any trump cards, he said with a smile. Hu Ken laughed coldly. So what? I am at the 5 changes. My power is far above yours, and my endurance is also far above yours. If we continue to waste time, you will definitely die. So what? I have treasure pig in my hands, Ling Han said with a smile. Once the perverted pig heard this, it immediately raised its head proudly. It was indeed a treasure pig, extremely noble. Hu Can's eyebrows twitched, and his killing intent rose uncontrollably. This pig! Now, his hatred towards this pig had even surpassed that of Ling Han's. In the battle that had lasted for 10 minutes, this pig had continuously spat at him, and this was something that he could no longer tolerate. Damn pig! He said fiercely. He swore in his heart that after he finished off Ling Han and the rest, he would definitely slaughter and eat this damned pig. If he couldn't cut it open, then so be it. He would just steam it in a cage. The two of them fought again. This time, Ling Han had no more misgivings, and his attacks were naturally even fiercer. But Hu Can was at the 5 changes after all, and he also held an artifact in his hand. His combat ability was not inferior to his at all. The battle was still at a stalemate, but Ling Han was becoming more and more confident. Actually, even without using the little pink pig, his combat ability would not be too inferior to Hu Can's. After all, doing this was equivalent to tying one of his own hands, limiting a portion of his combat ability. Then why use a little pink pig? Firstly, this perverted pig's defense was simply heaven-defying. It could reduce a lot of Ling Han's energy consumption. Secondly, it had the ability to spit saliva. It was simply the strongest taunt. Anyone who was spat saliva by a pig would be furious. Once he was enraged, he would naturally fall into chaos and reveal his flaws. As expected, Ling Han's patience gradually paid off. In his fury, Hu Can desperately used his power, wanting to defeat Ling Han in a single blow. However, faced with perverted pig's unassailable defense, this was just a waste of energy. Instead, Ling Han seized the opportunity to counterattack, adding a few more wounds to his body. And in his fury, it was naturally impossible for his defense to be perfect. Ling Han's judgment had not fallen either, so his ability to grasp openings was naturally top-notch. With a few strikes, Hu Can had a few more wounds on his body. After fighting for a while longer, Hu Can was finally reminded by the pain and stopped attacking so blindly and wildly. He realized that such a forceful attack was meaningless. Not only would it not hurt Ling Han, it would only deform his defense and consume his strength. But was he really going to leave just like that? It must be known that he had been disrespectful to a ultimate bone realm elite, and had even lusted after the beloved daughter of a city lord. If news of this got out, it would be enough to have him die 100 times over. If he left now, then he could forget about staying in Xianbei country in the future. No, he did not want to be a wild man. Hu Ken's eyes were bloodshot. He had to kill all of these people. The Hu family had just been destroyed, and his life's work had gone to waste. He was already in a state of emotional turmoil, and now that he had been provoked by the little pink pig's saliva, his mentality had long since lost its balance. Right now, there was only one thing on his mind, and that was to kill. All of you die. Hu Can waved his sword madly. Calmness flashed past his face, and he became even more berserk. Facing such a madman, Ling Han had no choice but to be careful. Otherwise, if he was really struck once, the power of the 5 changes in addition to the power of a magical weapon was enough to kill him. Fight, fight, fight. The two of them continued to fight fiercely, accompanied by fresh blood. Facing Hu Can's madness, even Ling Han was unable to remain completely uninjured. He was also struck a few times, and could not help but bleed. However, compared to Hu Can, he was much better off. This was because he had the little pink pig to block the attacks, but Hu Can could only resolve them himself. In a head-on clash, how could he possibly resolve and dodge every single attack? More and more wounds appeared on Hu Can's body, and blood flowed all over the ground. Because he had lost too much blood, Hukan's expression became uglier, and fear appeared on his face. If this continued, he would die. He wanted face, and he wanted revenge. After his family had been destroyed, his emotions had almost gone crazy. However, once he was truly faced with death, he was afraid. Compared to his life, everything else was fleeting. He did not want revenge, nor did he want wealth and prosperity. He only wanted to live well and live out the rest of his life. When he thought of this, he suddenly turned around and broke into a run. He was in the 5th transformation. When he sprinted with all his might, his speed could reach the speed of sound. It was not something that Ling Han could catch up to. He had already understood this during the battle the day before yesterday. "I've been waiting for you." Ling Han smiled. With a shake of his left hand, he threw the fat pig towards Hukan. His feet used the flying shuttle steps, and his speed also instantly soared, reaching the speed of sound. Pung, a sonic boom rang out, and the grass in the surroundings immediately bent down, while on the other side of the river, a huge wave swept up. The little dirty pig let out a tragic cry, but it could not avoid colliding with Hukan, causing him to stumble. This had been smashed out by Ling Han with 1,000,000 kilograms of force, so how could it not be powerful? However, Hukan had already made up his mind to flee. After stabilizing himself, he broke into a run once again. But just at this moment he felt a chill on his back, and then all the strength in his body seemed to have disappeared. Even taking a step forward was difficult. He felt pain in his chest, but when he lowered his head to look, it was very normal. Poof! Ling Han pulled out the broken sword, and fresh blood instantly spurted out wildly from Hukan's back. Being pierced in a vital spot by the broken sword, he was definitely dead. Hukan slowly turned around. He looked at Ling Han blankly, his eyes filled with confusion. How had Ling Han caught up to him? That was impossible. Even if he had been smashed, he possessed the speed of sound, so how could Ling Han catch up to him? Pung! He threw himself towards the ground, ending his life. Ling Han put away the broken sword. He had long since expected that people like Hukan would definitely be afraid of death, so he had been waiting for the other to flee for his life, then he would use the flying shuttle steps to catch up and kill him in one strike. Hukan naturally would not have thought that in just 2 days' time, Ling Han had already mastered a movement technique. This was being too clever for his own good. Ling Han let out a long breath. The 5th transformation was really hard to kill. He could be said to have used up all his tricks, and only then was he able to kill him by using the trap that the other knew. But when he turned around, he saw Steward Mu and Feng Ruoxian looking at him as if they had seen a ghost. Chapter 3249. A Beautiful Romance. A meridian opening kill at the blood-changing realm, and one at the 5 changes at that. Seeing this with his own eyes, he still doubted his own eyes. Housekeeper Mu and Feng Ruoxian hadn't said anything before because they didn't want to disturb Ling Han. A single distraction in a fierce battle could be fatal. Now that the battle was over, the two of them couldn't say a single word. Mph. The little pink pig ran back and spat at Ling Han's feet. Daring to use Uncle Pig as a shield. Daring to smash Uncle Pig like a brick. Spitting you to death, you bastard. Little pig, don't be rude to the young master. Huan Shue hurriedly ran over and picked up the little pink pig. Ling Han smiled and said, "If you spit at me again, I'll immediately turn you into a roasted suckling pig." The little pink pig didn't back down at all and continued to spit at Ling Han. Who was afraid of who? "Ling Han, I really have to thank you this time," said Housekeeper Mu. His face was full of emotion. Who would have thought that he, a mighty extreme bone realm practitioner, would need the help of a meridian opening realm practitioner? Ling Han smiled and said, "Thankfully, Butler Mu had gifted me a movement technique. Otherwise, I would only have been able to watch as Hukan fled just now." Feng Ruoxian, on the other hand, looked at Ling Han curiously. Although she had seen Ling Han before and had a certain impression of him, she had been a high and mighty little princess at that time, and her curiosity towards Ling Han had only lasted for a fleeting moment. But now, she was truly shocked. Ling Han's battle record was too glorious. Killing someone at the 5 changes at the meridian opening realm was enough to shake the entire Xianbei country. Housekeeper Mu, what do you think next? Asked Ling Han. Housekeeper Mu thought about it and said, we have to get in touch with the capital as soon as possible. Ling Han nodded and said, then let's go to the next city. Eldest Miss can use the A to get in touch. Housekeeper Mu also happens to be recovering. The five of them set off. Steward Mu was carried on Sun Jianfang's back. There weren't many cities in Xianbei country. It couldn't be helped. When the previous civilization fell, more than 99% of the humans were killed by monsters. However, Xianbei country was especially large, so the distance between cities was very far. Each city ruled over a very large area. Along the way, they talked about the cause of the beast tide. In theory, even if the black-green flag often went deep into the mountains to sweep, they could only ensure that there were no strong demonic beasts in the surrounding areas of the cities. For a place like the Thousand Lotus Mountain, how could they send a large army to sweep it? Therefore, there were conditions for a beast tide to break out, but it was hard to imagine that it would be as terrifying as this time. Why it was impossible for a beast tide to break out for no reason? Was there some huge change in the deep mountains, or was there some other reason? Ling Han was also puzzled. Although he knew a little about the situation, he really couldn't think of any reason why the mysterious force would want to massacre Hidden Tiger City. Wait a minute. An idea suddenly flashed through his mind. Back then, the demonic beast of the Thousand Lotus Mountain had massacred the surrounding villages. That was why the 7th Squad was sent to kill it. The results proved that it wasn't an accident that the mysterious force let the demonic beast escape, but a deliberate action. Feeding on people? If this wasn't wrong, then could it be that this beast tide was actually a hunt? Using the entire Hidden Tiger City as prey for the spiritual-type demonic beasts to kill and eat? Ling Han's fists involuntarily clenched. If this was really the case, then this mysterious force was too crazy. He knew that spiritual-type demonic beasts could produce blood divine crystals, and that the mysterious force valued this very much. Then it made sense that the other party's goal was the blood divine crystals. Goo! The sound of the little pink pig interrupted Ling Han's thoughts. Its face was gloomy and hurt. Because it was fickle, it took a fancy to Feng Ruoxian and wanted to throw itself into her embrace. However, its appearance, which could charm thousands of girls, was completely useless in front of Feng Ruoxian. It was mercilessly rejected. Feng Ruoxian hid far away. She had mysophobia, and no matter how cute and clean the little pink pig looked, she felt disgusted whenever she thought of it crawling on the ground with its 4 hooves. Furthermore, this fellow was even spitting. What if it spat on her? So even you have times where you fail. Ling Han laughed as he picked up the pig. The perverted pig snorted at him, expressing its disdain. Ling Han laughed heartily. He now felt that this pig was actually quite useful. If he could modify it a little, for example making it less lazy, then it would be even more useful. For example, exploring some ancient ruins. In any case, the defenses were unbreakable, so it could charge around as it pleased. After a dozen or so days, they finally arrived at an intact small town. Although they had passed by a few villages and towns before, they had all been destroyed by the beast tide. That was because these villages and towns were in the path of the demonic beasts, so they were unlucky. Here, they rented a car and set off towards Jining City. Jining City was the closest city to Crouching Tiger City. It had been established 50 years ago, but it had only been built 20 years ago. From this, it could be seen how difficult it was to expand one's territory. With a car, they didn't need to rely on their own 2 legs, so it was naturally much easier. This was especially true for Feng Ruoxian. Although she also cultivated, she usually lived like a princess. Walking for half a day was still a novelty for her, but traveling every day was truly unbearable for her. After another dozen or so days, they arrived at Jining City. There was nothing they could do about it, the road was just too difficult. Jining City was a new city with only 50 years of history. It had both ancient and modern characteristics. Looking down from above, they could see the 100-story buildings, as well as ancient stone and wood buildings. Ling Han and the others drove into the city and first found a hotel to stay in. As long as they connected to the photon computer, They could directly transfer money. They didn't need to bring money with them at all. This was undoubtedly a very convenient thing. Feng Ruoxian immediately contacted the capital. Very quickly, she received a reply. They told her to stay in Jining City for a few days, and the capital would send an airship to pick her up. The group settled down peacefully. Ling Han sent housekeeper Mu to the hospital for an operation, while he refined a few healing medicinal pills. Once the housekeeper's operation was over, he had him consume them. Among these medicinal pills, Ling Han had also added the 600-year yellow stalk. This was an extremely nourishing item, and it was the most helpful for housekeeper Mu's injuries. If it was someone else, Ling Han wouldn't have dared to use such a strong medicinal pill, afraid that his body wouldn't be able to take it. But housekeeper Mu was a peak bone expert, and he was completely capable of withstanding it. Just like that, a dozen or so days passed. As expected, an airship landed in Jining City. The city lord, Yu personally brought over an envoy from the capital. Ruoxian, you've come to Jining City, but you actually didn't come to my house. Are you not treating me as an uncle? Yui said as soon as he entered. Chapter 3250. Feng Ruoxian said she wouldn't dare. She bowed to Yui and said, Ruoxian greets Uncle Yu. Sigh, I heard about your father. Yui sighed. Brother Zixing sacrificed himself for the people of the city. He should be our role model. Feng Ruoxian thanked him, but she naturally hoped that her father was still alive. How could being recognized as a martyr and a pillar of the country be more useful than a living person? Come, this is Captain Gu from the capital. Yui changed the topic and pointed to a young man beside him. Captain Gu is here to welcome Ruoxian back to the capital. Your humble servant Gu Xiangming greets Miss Ruoxian. The young man cupped his hands at Feng Ruoxian and bowed slightly. He wore a set of silver armor and looked rather handsome and valiant. Captain Yu. Feng Ruoxian returned the greeting. With Feng Zixing's passing, she became an orphan girl from a feudal official's family. Naturally, she couldn't put on airs. Gu Xiangming didn't dare to slight her. He heard that a few princes were interested in this beauty, but Feng Zixing kept wavering. He wanted to marry Feng Ruoxian to the one most likely to inherit the throne. Otherwise, she would have become a princess long ago. Moreover, Feng Zixing sacrificed himself for the country. When the emperor comes out of seclusion, he would definitely praise him. If he dared to be rude to Feng Ruoxian, he would suffer. Yui stayed behind to say a bunch of polite words. If Feng Ruoxian had any difficulties, she didn't need to be courteous with him. After a while, he said he had matters to attend to in the city and left. Miss Ruoxian, let's return to the capital as soon as possible. Gu Xiangming suggested, since such a big thing happened in Hidden Tiger City, the heaven-traversing marshal has personally led the army to quell the beast riot. Meanwhile, the Grand Elder ordered me to escort Ruoxian back to the capital safely as soon as possible. Feng Ruoxian nodded and said, Sorry to trouble you, Captain Xiang. It's my duty. Gu Xiangming appeared very polite. In reality, he was a captain of the Imperial Guards. Although his rank wasn't high, he was a close official of the emperor. Moreover, he was at the third blood transformation, but he was only 23 years old this year. It could be said that he had achieved success at a young age, which made him even more arrogant. Firstly, Feng Ruoxian was a beauty. Secondly, her identity was special. That was why he was so polite. Ruoxian, get ready. Feng Ruoxian said again. Gu Xiangming nodded and sat down. Feng Ruoxian entered the house. She would definitely bring housekeeper Mu along with her to the capital. Not mentioning anything else, an extreme bone stage expert would at least allow her to have a foothold in the capital. She wouldn't have to worry about being wronged or having no one to complain to. Ling Han was completely unperturbed. He had always been thinking about how to break through to the blood transformation realm, but he seemed to be stuck. It had already been a month, but he still hadn't advanced an inch. However, at this moment, he was actually communicating with the Empress and the others in the inner plane. Although he could only wave once to indicate no, and twice to indicate yes. Meanwhile, Huan Shui stood behind Ling Han with the little pink pig in her arms, dutifully doing what a maidservant should do. As for Sun Jianfeng, He went shopping, saying that he wanted to broaden his horizons. Gu Xiangming glanced over and saw that Ling Han was sitting upright like a mountain. He had no intention of greeting him at all. He revealed a look of displeasure. He was the captain of the Imperial Guards and a young expert at the third blood transformation. How dare you put on airs in front of me? You really don't know the rules. He said coldly. There's a guest, and you don't know how to serve tea? His face was full of arrogance, wishing he could point his nose at the sky. This was his true face. Huan Xue was a little worried. She had heard the conversation earlier. This young man seemed to have come from the capital. He had a very powerful background. She immediately wanted to put down the little perverted pig and go to make tea for Gu Xiangming. However, before she could move, she saw Ling Han suddenly open his eyes. And who are you? Ling Han asked, looking straight at him coldly. Gu Xiangming immediately stood up. This small fry actually dared to speak rudely to him. How dare you? You even dare to humiliate me, he said in a sinister tone. Ha, you want to order my maidservant around the moment you come up? Where did you get the courage? Ling Han retorted. Gu Xiangming snorted and said, Oh, can't I order you around? Ling Han ignored him and treated him as if he didn't exist. Gu Xiangming was infuriated by such indifference. Who would dare to show him any disrespect? There were, but he was definitely not a nobody in a small city at the border. I don't believe it. Gu Xiangming looked at Ling Han and said, I want you to serve me tea personally. Ling Han chuckled and said, You sure know how to dream. Why not? Gu Xiangming sneered. I'll make you do it willingly. He stared at Ling Han. His blood qi surged out and transformed into a white tiger. It revealed a murderous aura and let out a silent roar at Ling Han. One of the characteristics of the blood transformation realm was that their blood qi was too powerful and terrifying. It could form an overwhelming pressure, a little like a mental attack, but different. Ling Han was fearless. He had mid-level spiritual power, so this kind of murderous aura attack was nothing to him. However, he was not the kind of person who was willing to be at a disadvantage. He immediately activated his telekinesis and counterattacked. There was no such thing as distance when it came to spiritual power. This attack arrived as soon as it was said, and it crashed into the white tiger. Boom! The white tiger immediately collapsed. The murderous aura of the third transformation was no match for mid-level spiritual power. After all, this was only the embryonic form of a mental attack and not real telekinesis. Gu Xiangming could not help but cover his head. The impact of the telekinesis gave him a splitting headache. In terms of strength, even mid-level telekinesis could at most lift the weight of a few books. However, how fragile was the human brain? The skull could be extremely hard, but what about the brain? After being hit by the telekinesis, one's head naturally felt like it was about to explode. So you're a spiritual power cultivator. No wonder you're so arrogant. Gu Xiangming shook his right hand, and a ray of white light moved between his wrist, blocking Ling Han's mental attack. This should be a celestial artifact. Gu Xiangming snorted again and said, Spiritual power cultivators do have the right to be arrogant. They can become alchemy masters or array masters, but you're at most a low-level telekinesis. You're still trash in front of me. Ling Han was surprised. You're a guy who doesn't understand spiritual power at all. You don't even know what level my spiritual power is, and yet you dare to talk nonsense? Where does your courage come from? Where does your sense of superiority come from? Gu Xiangming strode towards Ling Han. He had already used a celestial artifact to block Ling Han's mental attack. In his impression, spiritual power cultivators had extremely low martial strength, and he could suppress them with just a wave of his hand. However, at this moment, the bedroom door opened, and Feng Ruoxian and Butler Mu walked out. Gu Xiangming frowned slightly, but stopped in his tracks. Chapter 3252. Ling Han was shocked. Yan Jun really had a long life. Even if he was a formation genius, he was still only at the illuminating pulse realm, and he still managed to escape. There was no justice in this world. But that was good. He could deal with it personally. Ling Han no longer paid attention to Yan Jun. He had not taken Yan Jun seriously before, and he would not take him to heart now. He discovered that basically all the Ultimate Bone Realm clans had people who had escaped. Not all, that was impossible, but there were at least a dozen. On the contrary, the number of Blood Transformation Realm clans that had escaped was much smaller. For example, in order to send Tuoba Tianhuang out, the Toba family had even lost 2 Blood Transformation Realm cultivators. Precisely because of this, Ling Han found it strange how Yan Jun had managed to escape. The formation and alchemy associations were almost completely wiped out. Ling Han discovered that Yan Jun was the only one who had survived. Alchemists were weak in battle, and those at the same cultivation level were terrible to look at. So, it was not strange that the Alchemy Association had been completely wiped out. But that group of people from the formation path should be slightly stronger, and yet none of them had managed to escape. Not knowing how Old Man Nyo was, Ling Han was a little worried. He did not have much feelings for others, but he was still somewhat grateful to Old Man Nyo. And Emoguahao, he actually did not manage to escape. Ling Han shook his head, feeling that it was a pity. All in all, Hidden Tiger City was really tragic this time. Out of a total population of more than 400,000, only 100 people had escaped alive. This matter naturally shocked the court and caused a huge uproar. But Ling Han believed that they should not be able to find out that it had anything to do with that mysterious faction. Alright, let's put the focus on myself first. Ling Han had always been thinking about why he had not broken through to the blood transformation realm, and he gradually had an idea. If it were an ordinary person, let alone a month, even 10 years would not be a rush, because the step from the illuminating pulse realm to the blood transformation realm was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. But Ling Han's expectations of himself were too high, and he also had a strong desire for power. In these few days, he did not cultivate, but was deep in thought. He speculated that the reason he hadn't broken through wasn't because his perception wasn't good enough, but because his physique wasn't up to par. There were a few times when he was clearly able to take that step, but because of some misgivings in his heart, he stopped. What I pursue is the strongest. Therefore, when I feel that I still have some flaws in my heart, it will turn into an inner demon at a critical moment, like breaking through, preventing me from taking that step. There's only one way to get rid of your inner demons, and that's to make yourself perfect. I want to improve my physique. Ling Han restarted his research on the indestructible heaven scroll. Previously, he already had some clues, and after some careful pondering, he already had a perfect idea. Refining the body requires a lot of materials. I've created a medicinal bath that can strengthen the skin, muscles, and bones. He immediately went to the pharmacy to buy the ingredients. This was concocted by combining the indestructible heaven scroll with the medicinal ingredients here. There were a few medicinal ingredients that were shockingly expensive, and one tael would be worth 100,000 Shenbei coins. Although Ling Han had earned some money later on, he could only concoct a few sets. I still have to continue earning money. Ling Han bought a few sets of ingredients and almost used up all the money he had, causing him to shake his head, feeling that he was so poor. He returned to the hotel and began to concoct the ingredients for the medicinal bath. This didn't need to be concocted, and only needed to be boiled. However, the time required was even longer. After more than 4 hours, a black pot was finally cooked, and the smell was extremely pungent. Ling Han poured the medicinal bath into the bathtub, and without waiting for it to cool down, immediately sat down. The hotter it was, the better the tempering effect would be. He circulated the improved version of the indestructible heaven scroll, absorbing the energy in the medicinal bath to strengthen his skin. Flesh and blood still wouldn't do, but that was a matter for the future. As he continued to absorb the essence in the medicinal bath, the water became clearer and clearer from its original black color. After 3 hours, there was only a faint gray color left, and the pungent smell had completely disappeared. My skin has become much tougher. Ling Han nodded and used a small knife to lightly cut his skin. However, the skin only slightly sunk and didn't break open. Only when he forcefully stabbed did the tip of the knife sink in, and a spot of blood appeared. The first time tempering the body was the best, because it was practically starting from zero, so the improvement was obviously great. Unfortunately, just like alchemical pills couldn't be taken continuously, tempering the body was the same, because the medicinal dregs would seep into the skin and needed time to naturally expel them, which was far longer than taking them orally. For example, secret power pills could be taken once a day, but medicinal baths could only be taken once every 3 days. Unless there's a natural treasure that doesn't have any side effects and can be taken continuously. Ling Han sighed. Don't think blindly and just concoct pills to earn money. Even if he could only take a medicinal bath once every 3 days, the ingredients in his hands wouldn't last him too many times. Young master, young master. Huan Shui hurriedly ran in. Of course, she was definitely still carrying that perverted pig in her arms. What's the matter? Ling Han asked. He had Huan Shui walk around the city more often to scout for information. Look. Huan Shui handed over a piece of paper. Ling Han took it and looked. On it was written that the Emperor Capital Academy would start accepting applications today, and the selection would begin 10 days later. Emperor Capital Academy, what the hell was this? Young master, the Emperor Capital Academy is the most powerful academy in the entire Xianbei country. The little maid had obviously inquired about it. She explained, in the past, the Emperor Capital Academy only accepted noble students. This is the first time they've made an exception and enrolled students from the outside. Also, the selection is to enter an ancient formation to find the Red Cloud Stone. This is a sacred item for tempering the body, and it's extremely precious. Apparently, this is the will of the Saint Emperor. In the future, he might even go to the academy to personally instruct them. Red Cloud Stone, sacred medicine for tempering the body. Ling Han's eyes immediately lit up. Did he really get what he lacked? He turned on his optical computer and searched for information related to the Red Cloud Stone. This was indeed a sacred item for tempering the body. It didn't need to be used in medicine, and as long as it was placed next to the flesh, the mysterious power in the stone would automatically enter the body and strengthen the vitality of the cells, achieving the effect of tempering the body. It was said that one of the 4 great marshals, General King Kong, obtained a piece of red cloud stone as tall as a person at the beginning of the world's upheaval. He slept on it every day and finally cultivated an invincible body. However, this kind of opportunity only existed at the beginning of the upheaval. The probability of finding the red cloud stone now was extremely low, and it was also extremely dangerous. Ling Han revealed a look of surprise. If he could obtain enough red cloud stones, then he would be able to complete the first stage of tempering the body and break through to the blood transformation realm. Had his luck attribute shown its power? Let's go register. He immediately set off with Huan Shui. After leaving the hotel, he directly called for a car, saving time and effort. Half an hour later, they arrived at the Emperor Capital Academy. The entire Emperor Capital was in the shape of a dragon bearing its fangs and brandishing its claws, and the Emperor Capital Academy was right on its front right claw. The academy was very big, and it was surrounded by white walls. One could clearly see the light of the formation flickering. This meant that if one tried to force their way in, not only would they not be able to enter, they would also very likely die. Ling Han got off the car and couldn't help but grimace. This place was really crowded. Chapter 3253. Emperor Capital Academy was open to the public for the first time, and it immediately caused a surge in applications. One had to know that His Majesty the Sacred Emperor would occasionally come to the academy to teach. Being able to see His Majesty the Sacred Emperor was a huge motivation for everyone. Especially in the imperial capital, the worship of the Sacred Emperor had reached a fanatical level. They all called him Sacred Emperor instead of His Majesty. Just queue up obediently. Luckily, under the Emperor's feet, no one dared to act recklessly and disobey the rules. Also, the descendants of the rich and powerful didn't need to rush this opportunity. Emperor Capital Academy was originally open to them. Ling Han queued for 3 hours before it was his and Huan Shui's turn. Fingerprint. The person in charge of registration nodded towards Ling Han. Ling Han pressed his thumb on a glass panel, and immediately, his identity information was displayed on the optical computer. Oh, you're a survivor of Hidden Tiger City, the person in charge said in surprise. Ling Han nodded. Age 18, cultivation 12 meridians. The person read the information and quickly finished his work. All right, come back in 10 days for the selection. Ling Han nodded and changed to Huanxue. Age 19, cultivation 11 meridians. The person did his job. Oh, you're also from Hidden Tiger City? Soon, Huanxue's registration was completed. There were conditions for the registration. One had to be under 30, and their cultivation had to be at least 10 meridians. However, if they were at the blood transformation realm, they didn't need to participate in the selection and could directly become a disciple of the academy. I wonder if Flag Master Lien is here. With her age and cultivation, she should be able to enter the academy directly. But this way, I won't be able to fight for the Red Cloud Stone. Ling Han and Huanxue left and returned to the hotel. After Sun Jianfang returned, Ling Han told him that he was going to enter Emperor Capital Academy. The old sect master said that he was about to find a job and planned to move out of the hotel after a while. For the next few days, Ling Han concocted pills every day. He couldn't just sit around and eat. In addition, he would temper his body once every 3 days. His physique was steadily improving. The indestructible Heaven Scroll had a special characteristic, and that was that the effects of body refining were limited by one's cultivation level. In fact, the majority of cultivation techniques were like this. Thus, as long as one cultivated it to the point where there was no more room for improvement, it would mean that one had reached the pinnacle of the illuminating meridian tier, and Ling Han would be able to dispel his inner demons and attempt to break through to the blood transformation tier. 10 days passed by quickly, and Ling Han had a large number of pills in his hands. He was just waiting for the selection to be over before going to the pharmacy to sell them. He brought the little servant girl to the Imperial Capital Academy again, pressed his fingerprint to enter the academy, and then gathered with countless people in the square. There were at least 50 to 60,000 people here. At a glance, the place was densely packed with human heads. I heard that only 100 people will be selected this time. What? Only 100? 100 is so little. We have at least tens of thousands of people here. That's one out of a few hundred people. Many people were screened out during the registration process. Otherwise, there would be more people. So difficult? Not necessarily. I heard that the selection this time is to search for red cloud stones. When the time comes, the 100 people who find the most red cloud stones will directly win. So, if you find a red cloud stone and immediately hide until the selection is over, you might be able to win. Hee, if I can get a red cloud stone, then even if I can't enter the academy, it'll be worth it. Everyone was discussing the selection this time. Ling Han didn't need to deliberately ask around to understand clearly. He yawned, appearing very listless. In terms of battle prowess alone, even an elite of the 5 changes had been killed by him. In the illuminating meridian tier, would he still have a match? Of course, there were other conditions for killing who can, but his battle prowess was at least on par with a 4 changes cultivator. This was without a doubt. So, he really couldn't raise his spirits. Later, he would only be bullying others. Suddenly, there was a great commotion in the crowd. What's going on? Someone asked from the side. Hong Tianliang is here. Someone answered. Which Hong Tianliang? Someone else asked. Idiot, how many people are there in the imperial capital? Hong Tianliang is obviously that person's younger brother. Hiss. Hong Tianliang still needs to participate in the selection? That's right, he's Senior Grand Tutor Hong's second grandson. He can directly enter the academy. You don't understand. He's here for the Red Cloud Stone. Otherwise he would definitely have broken through to the blood transformation realm. It's over, it's over. Now there's going to be one less spot. Nonsense. Although Hong Tianliang isn't as monstrous as that person, it said that he opened all the hidden meridians in his body to use the Red Cloud Stone to refine his body and then break through to the blood transformation realm. That means that even if he fails this time, he can still enter the academy after breaking through to the blood transformation realm. Of course. Moreover, with Senior Grand Tutor Hong's power, can't he send Hong Tianliang into the academy? Not to mention anything else, just because he's that person's younger brother, entering the academy will naturally be a piece of cake. Sigh, he's really lucky. Everyone sighed. They were both in their 20s, but the difference was like heaven and earth. Ling Han was also a little curious. There was indeed someone in the imperial capital who had also opened the 8 extraordinary meridians. Furthermore, from what everyone was saying, Hong Tianliang's older brother seemed to be even more amazing. Like the stars surrounding the moon, a young man walked over from afar. As long as he came close, the people in front would automatically open up a path for him. Hong Tianliang was a very handsome young man, but he was also incomparably arrogant and condescending. He didn't put anyone in his eyes. No one was unconvinced. Just because he was senior Grand Tutor Hong's grandson, who dared to provoke him. More importantly, he had an extremely monstrous older brother. Even the Saint Emperor clicked his tongue in praise and personally commented, "Heavenly genius." Hong Tianliang strode over and stopped at the very front of the group. He stood alone, as if he didn't want to be in the same group as anyone else. After this little episode, there were no more sensational events. At around 10 in the morning, someone in charge of the academy came out and announced the details of the selection this time. The basic situation was what those people had discussed before. The time limit was 10 days. During these 10 days, food and lodging had to be carried out in the formation. During this time, prospective students were allowed to fight with each other. The winner could take the red cloud gem of the loser, but they couldn't intentionally injure or kill anyone. Otherwise, not only would they lose the right to enter the academy, but they would also be severely punished by the Empire's laws. Alright, let's begin. The formation opened, and a door appeared, flickering with a faint light. Everyone filed in. Many of them had the intention of snatching a red cloud gem and then hiding for 10 days. Thus, once they rushed in, they immediately used their movement techniques and quickly disappeared into the distance. When Ling Han entered the formation, it was already 10 minutes later. He sized it up. The Imperial Capital Academy was located at the right claw of the dragon. If one looked further, it would be high mountains and lofty ridges. Thus, this formation was also in the middle of the mountains. At a glance, it was like entering a primitive forest. Want to find a small red cloud gem here? Difficult. Chapter 3254. There should be some sort of hint, Ling Han thought. Otherwise, even if there were 60 to 70,000 people, and even if he had 10 days, it was possible that only a few people would find the red cloud gem. He had no intention of finding the red cloud gem himself. Instead, he had long since made preparations to rob them. Since this is a formation, I'll come and study it. Ling Han walked around casually, but up until now, he still hadn't discovered anything special about the formation. Everything was as normal as usual. Ah! A cry of surprise came from ahead. The forest rustled and very soon, he saw 8 people running over in an extremely sorry state. Then he saw a fierce tiger appear. It was 15 feet long, and its size was extremely shocking. The speed of this ferocious tiger was extremely fast, and very soon, it caught up with the last person. It lowered its head and bit him, then with a fling, shwa, that person was thrown out. Peng, he heavily crashed into a tree, and the tree was directly broken in half. Shwa, it caught up with another person. This time, it waved its paw, and that person was instantly sent flying. He also crashed into a tree before stopping, moaning in pain. From the looks of it, even his arms seemed to be broken. They had not even begun to search for the red cloud gem, and they had already thrown away their helmets and armor. Ling Han saw clearly that this fierce tiger's strength should have surpassed 12 meridians, but had not reached 13 meridians. To the majority, this was indeed an incredibly terrifying existence. However, if 2 or 3 12 meridians joined forces, they should be able to deal with it. But these people only cared about running for their lives, and only wanted to escape from the tiger's mouth. In that case, they could only let this fierce tiger wreak havoc. Very soon, the 8 people became 5. When they reached Ling Han, there were only 2 people left. They rushed past Ling Han as if they were running for their lives. They did not want to participate in this selection anymore. They only wanted to escape. The fierce tiger rushed over, and Ling Han bore the brunt. Ang! The fierce tiger roared angrily, and swiped at Ling Han with its paw. Boom! A giant paw descended from the sky. Young master! Seeing that Ling Han did not dodge, Summon Snow hurriedly cried out. Goo! The little pink pig squealed. It was thrown out by Summon Snow, and drew an arc in the air. Summon Snow charged over and blasted a palm at the giant claw. Ling Han shook his head. Huan Xue was no match for this fierce tiger. Although her progress was very fast and she already had 11 meridians, Huan Xue was no match for this fierce tiger. He clenched his fist and punched upwards. The force reached the speed of sound, and a series of sonic booms rang out, turning into a very obvious fist imprint. Although it was launched later, it arrived first and blasted onto the giant claw. Pung! The ferocious tiger immediately exploded. How terrifying was the strength of 1,000,000 Jin. Ling Han discovered that although the tiger had exploded, its flesh and blood did not splatter everywhere. Instead, it transformed into a flash of light and disappeared, and a red stone fell from the sky. Red marble, as it turned out, the red cloud stone could be hidden in the body of a ferocious beast, and the ferocious tiger was actually a manifestation of a formation, not a real entity. Interesting, the red cloud gem might be in the grass and trees. Ling Han put away the crimson cloud stone and immediately began to absorb the stone's essence. He discovered that if he allowed the red cloud gem to act on its own, then the effect would only be 1. But after he circulated the indestructible heaven scroll, the effect would increase to 10, which was a shocking increase. Comfortable. Ling Han could feel that his cells were strengthening. This could not be seen from the outside, but the change was real. Little pig, Huan Xue finally remembered that in a moment of desperation, she had actually abandoned the little perverted pig. She hurriedly ran over to pick it up. The little perverted pig humphed. It was very angry. It had actually been abandoned by someone. This was practically a great humiliation to it. It was so cute, so who could bear to abandon it? Although it was picked up by Huan Xue, it was still throwing a tantrum and was very stubborn. However, after Huan Xue pressed onto its chest, its so-called dignity was immediately tossed beyond the highest heavens, and it began to freely enjoy itself. Ling Han advanced, while the little female attendant hurriedly followed behind. The two of them climbed over a tall mountain, and a lake appeared in front of them. It was very large, but it was still very far away from them. Looking at it from afar, the lake was like a mirror. Let's rest by the lake tonight, Ling Han said. They had brought dry rations, but did not bring water. Huan Xue naturally would not object, and only nodded repeatedly. They walked, and a wild boar appeared. This wild boar's physique was relatively normal, but it was very ferocious. After discovering the two of them, it immediately charged at them. This really was just an ordinary wild boar. Ling Han casually blasted out a wave of force, and this wild boar died and fell to the ground. We'll have pork for dinner tonight, he said. Humph, humph. The little pink pig was very angry. This person actually dared to say that he wanted to eat pork in front of him. This was too audacious. If you have the guts, then don't eat it, Ling Han said to the little pink pig. The little pink pig was proud. It was a pig with principles. The two of them continued forward. Some of the wild beasts that appeared here were illusions formed by formations, but some were real. However, whether they were real or fake, it was impossible to tell unless they fought. When they climbed over the mountain and arrived at the foot of the mountain, before they had even walked out of the dense forest, they heard the sound of footsteps coming from behind them. Ling Han turned his head to look, and saw a young man coming from behind. He looked to be about 16 or 17 years old, and he was slightly handsome. Seeing Ling Han look over, this young man smiled at Ling Han, revealing 2 rows of snow-white teeth. Xiao, his speed was very fast, and he quickly overtook the young man. Just as he was about to leave the dense forest, he heard a bang, and his whole body sank into the ground. What was going on? Ling Han was shocked. There was actually a trap there. A large pit that was about 4 to 5 feet deep had been dug out, and it was extremely steep. If it were an ordinary person, they could only be trapped in there and wait for rescue. However, if it was a martial artist, even if they could not jump out, the strength of their hands was terrifying, and they could forcibly punch a hole in the wall of the pit and slowly climb up. However, since someone had dug a pit here, it would definitely not be limited to this. Shio shio shio. 3 young men flew down from the tree and stood beside the pit. Hey, 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 what is the meaning of this? The young man in the pit asked. Hand over the red cloud stone, and we'll let you out, a young man in black said from above. I just came in. Where did the red cloud stone come from? The young man below said. You haven't even grown any hair, and you still want to lie to your uncle, see? The young man in black snorted. Haven't grown any hair? The young man below did something that made people spit out rice. He undid his belt, and then took off his pants and underwear to his knees. Then, he said proudly, Look, have you grown any hair? Immediately, the 3 young men above were petrified. How could there be such a person? Ling Han was also speechless. What was this young man's brain made of? The young man pulled up his pants and shouted, Hurry up and apologize to me. Apologize for what? Just because I said that you actually have hair? Crazy. The 3 young men above all shook their heads. They felt that there was something wrong with this young man's brain, and it was better not to waste time on him. Chapter 3256. What was going on? Ling Han activated his mystic power and formed a shield. Hua, the waves crashed into him, but he was naturally completely unharmed. Call Snow was far inferior. Her mystic power was not as strong, so she could only retreat and dodge. Gu Qiuling, on the other hand, also used his mystic power to block the waves. Only the little pink pig was unable to dodge or block. It was directly hit by the waves and was directly sent flying. Its body was also wet. It was enraged and it began to squawk at the lake. Boom, the surface of the lake split open, and a huge creature appeared. This was a huge snake. It was impossible to tell how long it was, but just the part that emerged from the water was several dozen meters long, and it was as thick as a well. Just its size was enough to make people shiver. There were demonic beasts in the lake? Was this the real deal, or was it created by a formation? I'll fight. Gu Qiuling laughed loudly, and broke into a run towards the center of the lake. Pa, 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 he stepped on the surface of the water, but he actually did not sink. This was because his speed was too fast. Just the little bit of tension on the surface of the water was enough to allow him to run without sinking. He had not yet reached the speed of sound, but the difference was not too great. This brat, perhaps he had already opened all 20 meridians. Gu Qiuling arrived, and his fist punched towards the huge snake. The huge snake did not dodge. It directly twisted its huge body to meet the punch, using its body as a huge club, and swung towards Gu Qiuling. With a loud sound, Gu Qiuling was instantly sent flying. Pooh, he fell into the water. Without running at high speed, the water was naturally unable to support his weight. Ling Han's eyes lit up. This huge snake was actually in the blood transformation realm, and it was definitely not just at the first change. No matter what, it had to be at the second change. The huge snake coiled its body, and once again attacked Gu Qiuling. Gu Qiuling stretched out his hand and slapped the surface of the water. Peng, he immediately broke out of the water. He once again used high speed, madly sprinting on the surface of the water, waiting for an opportunity to find the huge snake's weakness. He had to run. Otherwise, if he was in the water, his movements would be too restricted. The giant snake chased after him, spitting out its red tongue and making a hissing sound that made people feel like they were in the wilderness. Although Gu Qiuling was a bit of a straight person, he wasn't stupid in battle. He knew that his strength was inferior and he was on the opponent's home ground, so he didn't have the slightest intention of fighting head-on. Unable to catch up, the giant snake suddenly twisted its body. Boom, the entire surface of the lake instantly began to boil, forming huge waves. Gu Qiuling's body swayed unsteadily, and the waves in the lake caused his body to sway unsteadily as well. He almost lost his balance. After all, this was not land. The giant snake took this opportunity to charge over. Peng, Gu Qiuling could only take it head-on, and was once again sent flying. Little brother Gu, let me do it, Ling Han said with a smile as he stood up. Little brother. Gu Qiuling looked at the space between his legs. We haven't even compared, so how do you know that I must be little brother? Obviously, his brain circuit was wrong again. Ling Han charged over. He also stepped on the surface of the water as if he was walking on flat ground. Soon, he met the giant snake head-on and punched out. Demonic monkey fist, 20 stacked layers of strength. Ling Han didn't want to waste time on a demonic beast. A single punch would do. The giant snake was fearless and charged at Ling Han. Pung heavy sound rang out, and the giant snake's huge body was sent flying. And at the place where the punch landed, a bloody hole the size of a wash basin had shockingly appeared. It was just a single strike, and its tough body was penetrated by Ling Han. However, the giant snake was too big, and this was not a vital point, so it wasn't killed in a single strike. Ling Han caught up. He ran on the snake's body, arrived at the snake's head, and landed a punch. Such a huge snake, where could he find its weak point? So, he directly exploded its head. The punch landed, and the giant snake's head was instantly blasted apart, turning into a ball of blood rain. It had originally bounced upwards, but the force of this punch was directed downwards. The two forces acted on the snake's body at the same time, and with a paw, the giant snake instantly broke in the middle. Ling Han's figure shot forward, and he quickly returned to the shore. An explosion rang out, kicking up huge waves. Gu Qiuling looked at him in a daze, and then he lowered his head to look at the space between his legs. He muttered, "If he's so badass, then he really might be bigger than me." Ling Han naturally heard this, and his mouth twitched. This youth's way of thinking was truly different from ordinary people. "From today onwards, you are my big brother," said Gu Qiuling with an incomparably serious expression. Ling Han couldn't help laughing. "If everyone you can't beat calls you big brother, then how many big brothers would you have?" Gu Qiuling seriously thought about it and said, "Only someone of the same realm and who can defeat me can be my big brother." Yes, he was quite principled. Ling Han pointed at the giant snake in the lake. "Then you clean it up. A blood transformation realm demonic snake definitely has quite a few good things on it." "Yes, big brother." Gu Qiuling's reply was very clear. He immediately jumped into the lake and dragged the giant snake out. If it had been Huan Xue, she wouldn't have had such strength. "This is a real snake that lives here. Maybe there's some kind of treasure in the lake," muttered Ling Han. He immediately jumped into the lake and began to search carefully. The lake was very large, but Ling Han was very patient. In any case, he had 10 days, and he didn't want to search for the Red Cloud stone himself. So he could use the last 1 or 2 days to carry out his robbery plan. If he held his breath now, he could maintain it for nearly half an hour. In addition, his swimming speed in the water was not slow, so half an hour was enough for him to search 1/3 of the area. In theory, he only needed to come up to the surface to breathe twice. Half an hour later, he came to the surface and took a deep breath. But he didn't find anything. He once again entered the lake and searched. After a while, he finally found something. There was a green stone at the bottom of the lake. There was actually a plant growing in a crack. It only bore a single fruit, and this fruit was actually a green gourd. Good. Ling Han swam over and reached out to touch the gourd. It was just a light touch. Pa! The gourd actually fell from the vine. Seeing that the gourd was about to float to the surface, Ling Han quickly reached out and grabbed the gourd. What was this thing? Could it be eaten? Ling Han thought about it and decided to go ashore first. He didn't need to study it underwater. He came to the surface and came ashore, but he saw 7 people lying on the ground. Seeing that we killed the giant snake, they wanted to intervene and rob the Red Cloud stone, Gu Qiuling explained. "But there's no Red Cloud stone," Huan Xue said quickly. Ling Han nodded. Real demonic beasts shouldn't have the Red Cloud stone. Otherwise, the effect would have long been absorbed by the demonic beasts. He sat down and began to study this green gourd. He always felt that this gourd shouldn't be simple. From the outside, he couldn't see the slightest difference. Ling Han probed with his divine sense and couldn't help but be surprised. Then, he revealed a pleasantly surprised expression. Inside the gourd, there was actually another space. Although it wasn't big, its length, width, and height were only about 3 meters. This was a spatial magic tool. Chapter 3257. A good story. Spatial magic tool. It's actually a spatial magic tool. Ling Han had always wanted a spatial magic tool, and he had looked it up on the optical computer. Yes, there was such a thing as a spatial magic tool, but the price had already been pushed up to a few hundred million Xianbei dollars. More importantly, there had never been a record of it being sold. Simply put, no one was selling it. Modern people didn't even know how to make normal magic tools, let alone spatial magic tools. Therefore, spatial magic tools could only be passed down from the previous civilization, but most of the historical sites of the previous civilization were under the protection of formations. There were pitifully few that could be developed. Therefore, it was difficult to obtain magic tools, and even more difficult to obtain spatial magic tools. Ling Han had already given up hope, and planned to wait until he was a little stronger before considering this problem. He didn't expect it to appear on its own. Spatial magic tools actually grew? Ling Han had a strange expression. This was different from the origin world's spatial magic tools. Not to mention the fact that they were much smaller. Most of them would be made into rings or necklaces for easy carrying. If he carried a gourd when he went out in the future, would people mistake him for a drunkard? Luckily, this gourd wasn't big, only half a foot tall. He could easily hold it with one hand and just hang it on his waist. The Emperor Capital Academy definitely didn't know that there was a gourd vine growing at the bottom of the lake, and that it had produced a gourd with a spatial attribute. Otherwise, they would have plucked it long ago. Profited big time. Ling Han's expression didn't change, but his heart was wild with joy. This trip to the academy, even if he didn't obtain too many red cloud stones, it was already worth it. But how should a spatial magic tool be used? He plucked a leaf, wrapped it with his divine sense, and then communicated with the gourd. With a whoosh, the leaf disappeared. If he used his divine sense to scan it, he would find that it was in the space of the gourd. The usage was actually the same. Now, he didn't have to carry a huge bag like a thief when he went out in the future. The only problem was that the space wasn't big enough. It was only the size of a small house. He felt a little regretful. If those people with spatial magic tools knew about this, they would probably jump out and point at his nose, scolding him for being greedy. One had to know that the existing spatial magic tools only had three-dimensional space of about a foot. In comparison, the space of the green gourd was 1,000 times bigger. What did people use spatial magic tools to store? Precious pills? Peerless ingredients? How much space would that require? But Ling Han's first move was a nature-defying existence like the Black Tower. It would not be an exaggeration to say that the entire lower realm could actually be contained in it. So, there would be no harm if there was no comparison. They rested by the lake. After the night passed, Call Snow woke up early in the morning to roast meat. After the three of them were full, Gu Qiuling bid farewell to them and set off on his own. Ling Han asked Huan Xue to take out all the valuables from the bag and put them all into the green gourd. "Young master, this is amazing." Huan Xue's eyes widened in amazement. Even the pig revealed a strange expression and kept looking at Ling Han. There were pitifully few innate spatial artifacts, and they were not just simple containers. They also had many special abilities. Even in the previous civilization, very few people had the opportunity to obtain such a treasure. It was no exaggeration to say that if this gourd appeared in the previous civilization, it would definitely attract some old monsters to fight for it. But now, the Emperor Capital Academy obviously had it, but did not find a single one, allowing Ling Han to take advantage of it. Hiss, this brat's luck was too good. The little pink pig spread its limbs and hugged the green gourd tightly, looking like it was going to be Lord Pig from now on. Ling Han had a thought. Could he put this perverted pig inside? He used his thought to wrap it inside, but surprisingly discovered that this perverted pig's body had a kind of power that rebounded his divine sense. How many secrets did this pig hide? Ling Han decided to try other living creatures, but he obviously couldn't use Call Snow as an experiment. Thus, he walked slowly and soon found a rabbit in the dense forest. He chased after it and caught it, but he didn't expect it to be formed by a formation. With a purr, it turned into light and shadow and disappeared, replaced by a red stone. Red Cloud Stone. Ling Han's expression was strange. He didn't look for it deliberately, and the red cloud stone just appeared in front of him. Did his luck attribute explode? Young master is really lucky, the little servant girl said, clapping her hands. The little pig tilted its head and looked at Ling Han. This was like a heavenly treasure taking the initiative to throw at Ling Han. Could this brat be the legendary person favored by the heavens? If that was really the case, then he had to properly curry favor with him. Ling Han continued forward. After a while, he finally encountered a wild wolf that hadn't evolved into a demonic beast. Ling Han grabbed it by the neck and lifted it up. It was like a little puppy, unable to resist. With a thought, shio, the wild wolf disappeared. It was sucked into the green gourd. The wild wolf didn't die and went berserk in the space of the gourd. Suddenly entering a dark and sealed environment, it naturally couldn't control itself. Ling Han threw in some wild boar meat. He wanted to see if living creatures could survive in the space of the gourd. After doing this, he ignored it. After Ling Han and the servant girl left, they saw a figure suddenly rush over. This was a young man with his hands behind his back. He clearly wasn't old, but he had an intimidating aura. Hong Tengyang, it should be here. According to the information I obtained from the literature of the previous civilization, there should be a vitality-nourishing gourd vine here. Calculating the time, it should have produced a gourd long ago, he murmured. This gourd not only has a space of its own inside, but it can also nourish the body. It's too amazing for words. This is my great fortune. Once I obtain it, I finally have the hope of surpassing that person. When speaking of that person, his face revealed an incomparably complicated expression. There was envy, jealousy, worship, and hatred. He leaped into the large lake and began to search. After more than an hour, Hong Tianliang surfaced, his face full of malice. He found the green stone and the gourd vine, but he didn't find a gourd hanging on it. What was going on? Could it be that someone had beaten him to it and snatched away the fortune that belonged to him? If it was something else, he might have smiled and left confidently. But this time, he definitely couldn't. The vitality-nourishing gourd was related to whether or not he could surpass that person. This was a shadow that had been pressing down on him ever since he could remember, even though that person was also his closest brother. He went ashore and very quickly discovered the remains of the giant snake on the other side of the lake. There were also 7 other people lying unconscious on the ground. Gu Qiuling was really ruthless. It had already been a night, but these 7 people still hadn't woken up. Humph! Hong Tianliang snorted lightly, emitting a terrifying aura. Instantly, the 7 people opened their eyes at the same time, filled with fear. Chapter 3258. Second Young Master Hong. When they saw Hong Tianliang, the 7 of them hurriedly got up and bowed respectfully. Hong Tianliang was a prodigy of martial art to begin with, and his future achievements were limitless. Furthermore, his grandfather was the imperial tutor of the current dynasty and had a high status and authority. Of course, what was most revered was that person's younger brother. Hong Tianliang nodded slowly and said, "You were knocked unconscious by someone. He's only 16 or 17 years old, but he's very, very strong." The 7 of them hastily replied. Being stared at by Hong Tianliang made them feel as if they were being stared at by an ancient beast, causing them to feel as if their guts were about to burst out. This kind of feeling was too depressing, and it would leave a psychological scar. "Oh, there's also a woman. She's a little older," someone added. Hong Tianliang took a deep breath and said, "Describe their appearance to me." After the 7 of them described Gu Qiuling and Huan Shui's appearance, Hong Tianliang turned on his photon computer and said, "Help me investigate 2 people." He described Gu Qiuling and Huan Shui's appearance and clothing. Logically speaking, optical computers were not allowed during the competition. This was also considered cheating, but who asked him to be Hong Tianliang? After a while, a reply came from the other side. Hong Tianliang projected 2 photos. "Is it them?" The 7 people were all astonished. They found the person so quickly. This method was too heaven-defying. "Yes, that's them. Gu Qiuling." Hong Tianyang looked through Gu Qiuling's information. He completely ignored Summon Snow. This was just an 11 Meridian minor character. There was no way he could have killed this huge snake. Although the important parts have been cut off from the remnant aura, I can still determine that this is a blood transformation demonic beast. Even if Gu Qiuling had opened all his hidden meridians, his strength would at most be 400,000 pounds. Therefore, this should be a first blood transformation demonic beast. Ordinary meridian opening experts naturally can't provoke a blood transformation demonic beast. So that Yuan Fuan gourd was definitely taken by him. I have to find him before he figures out the purpose of the gourd and retrieve the treasure. Otherwise, if the news leaks, it will bring me great trouble. He then contacted the people outside to locate Gu Qiuling's location. Everyone thinks that I suppressed my cultivation for the sake of obtaining the Red Cloud Stone, so I didn't make a breakthrough and insisted on participating in this selection. But they don't know that although I want the Red Cloud Stone, the spirit-nourishing gourd is what I really care about. No one can take away what I, Hong Tianliang, have set my eyes on. He showed a hint of ruthlessness. At this time, the optical supercomputer also reported back. Hong Tianliang immediately leaped up and rushed in Gu Qiuling's direction. Summon Snow was naturally ignored by him again. Ling Han and Huan Shui walked aimlessly. Since they were looking for the Red Cloud Stone, it didn't matter where they went. Perhaps they would run into some heavenly treasure if their luck was off the charts. Needless to say, Ling Han definitely carried a strong halo of hatred. No matter where he went, he would get into trouble, whether he was willing or not, whether he took the initiative or not. But now, the halo of hatred must have been deeply hidden, replaced by the attribute of his luck. That was because in less than half a day's time, all kinds of demonic beasts had lunged at them and were easily killed by Ling Han with one punch. Later it was proven that this was all derived from the formation and contributed to him quite a few Red Cloud Stones. This was definitely an explosion of luck. Xiao, another mountain leopard, lunged over, but its strength was only at 10 meridians, just enough to release its force. With a wave of its right front paw, a wave of force swept over. Summon Snow met it with a battle cry. Peng, peng, peng. After dozens of moves, the mountain leopard was killed, turning into broken shadows. Another Red Cloud Stone descended from the sky. Young master, for you. She picked up the Red Cloud Stone and handed it to Ling Han. If others saw this, they would definitely weep bitterly, because too many people didn't have the slightest gain after entering, unlike Ling Han and the others, who had Red Cloud Stones delivered themselves. Ling Han shook his head. Take this one yourself. Take a few more after this. I estimate that 5 or 6 will be enough for you to enter the top 100. Young master, can Summon Snow also enter the academy? Summon Snow asked in surprise. Ling Han smiled. If you don't enter the academy, I'll have to spend money to find a place for you to stay. Of course, this was a joke. Thank you, young master. Thank you, young master. Summon Snow nodded incessantly. Just as Summon Snow was about to put away the Red Cloud Stone, a loud shout rang out, and a young man flew over. Summon Snow started. I'm putting away the thing young master gave me. What are you shouting for? Hand over the Red Cloud Stone. The young man said coldly. He looked to be about 24 or 25 years old, and had a confident expression. Summon Snow subconsciously tightened her grip on the Red Cloud Stone and repeatedly shook her head. This belongs to young master, I can't give it to you. The young man looked at Ling Han and couldn't help but sneer. What dog's hit young master is this? You dare act all high and mighty in front of me? Who are you? Summon Snow was furious. She couldn't tolerate anyone being disrespectful to her young master. I'm Han San. The young man gave himself a thumbs up. Hansen. The little maid was at a loss. Of course she hadn't heard of this name before. Han San was both angry and anxious. You've actually never heard of my name? Go ask around in the Fulin district. Who doesn't know of my fame? You sound like a hoodlum, Ling Han said to Summon Snow. Summon Snow nodded. Who's a hoodlum? Who's a hoodlum? Han San jumped up. He was the trump card of the Iron Bull Dojo. He had only been in the dojo for 5 years, But he had already become the eldest senior brother. If he entered the Imperial Academy this time, he would be even more awesome. "You're the master, right? You dare look down on me?" Han San charged at Ling Han. Those who had come to participate in the selection, apart from the pretentious Hong Tianliang, meant that everyone else was at the bottom of the hierarchy. Therefore, there was nothing to be afraid of. Boom, he struck out with his palm. An ordinary 12 meridian would at most have 120,000 gene of strength. Of course, this was actually not bad among 12 meridians. This was more like it. If he met someone who had opened all his hidden meridians, wouldn't it be too chaotic? Ling Han extended a finger and pressed it towards the other. Peng Han San was instantly sent flying and directly knocked unconscious. "Search him and see if he has any red cloud stones on him," Ling Han said. "Yes, young master." Summon Snow hurriedly searched his body. Very quickly, her eyes lit up. "Young master, there is." A red cloud stone appeared in her hand. Ling Han nodded and said, "Okay, put it away." Summon Snow carefully put away the red cloud stone. She knew that her young master really needed this kind of thing. Therefore, she was only keeping it for her young master. Once she obtained the right to enter the Imperial Academy, she would return the red cloud stone to Ling Han. "The more people who give away money, the better," Ling Han murmured. However, this caused Han San, who had just woken up, to immediately faint from anger again. Chapter 3260. Ling Han discovered that the power of heaven and earth in the green gourd was decreasing rapidly. It wasn't inexhaustible. A night passed, and the two exited the gourd. Because they were under a tree, they almost tripped and fell. Let's find a more flat place next time. Ling Han hung the green gourd on his waist and continued to wander the mountains with Huan Shui. His good luck attribute continued to work. It seemed like the formations here would go crazy when they encountered him and create beasts to attack him. In the end, they only produced pieces of red cloud rocks. Ling Han could clearly feel that his body was rapidly strengthening. Previously, because he didn't have a spatial artifact, he didn't bring the ingredients for the medicinal bath. After obtaining the green gourd, he regretted it. He shouldn't have been afraid of trouble and brought everything in. Now that he had more and more red cloud rocks, he didn't dwell on this anymore. He believed that after he digested all these red cloud rocks, his body would be able to reach the limits of the illuminating pulse realm. After walking for a day, they didn't encounter a single real beast, so there was nothing to eat. Huan Shui volunteered to continue hunting. Ling Han thought about it and nodded in agreement. This little servant girl should gradually develop her own independence. He couldn't always rely on her. He started a campfire. With the spatial artifact, he could bring all kinds of spices and wouldn't have to worry about food being tasteless. Not long after, he saw a person flying over from afar. He was very fast. When he first saw him, he was just a black dot, but in the blink of an eye, he was already in front of him. It was a tall and slender young man. He was quite handsome. It was Hong Tianliang. Hong Tianliang was very anxious now. He searched for an entire day but couldn't find Huan Shui or that young man. He had no choice but to use his photon computer to contact the outside world and ask someone to help him locate them again. Although the other party did it for him, it meant that this was the last time. When the message came, Hong Tianliang was stunned. The other party was actually behind him. He quickly ran back, feeling very anxious. It had already been more than a day. Could that person have figured out how to use the essence nurturing gourd and even found out that it had more powerful uses outside of the spatial artifact? Xiao, Hong Tianliang hurriedly stopped. He glanced at Ling Han, then used his hollow brain to project a picture. "Have you seen this woman before?" "Hey, isn't this called Snow?" Ling Han was astonished. Why was the other party looking for Huan Shui? Could it be that he had taken a look at her in the crowd and liked her? That was impossible. It wasn't that Ling Han was looking down on Huan Shui, but she was the second grandson of Grand Tutor Hong. Her talent in martial art was also quite monstrous. Ling Han felt that with his current status and identity, his maidservant wasn't worthy of Hong Tianliang's attention. Furthermore, calling Snow wasn't an exquisite beauty like the Empress, who was so beautiful that she could make one's head spin. Then why did the other party look for Huanxue? I'm asking you a question. What are you staring at? Hong Tianliang said with dissatisfaction. Although he had participated in this test, the truth was that he did not take any of the prospective students seriously. In his eyes, these people were not worthy of being his opponents, and were not worthy of being his classmates in the future. His goal was only the origin-nurturing gourd, and he could take some red cloud stones along the way. Taking a step back, red cloud stones were priceless to the general public, but as the grandson of Grand Tutor Hong, it was the same. After all, these red cloud stones weren't very pure, and could not compare to the ones that the Vajra general had obtained. Ling Han sighed. He really didn't want to take the initiative to cause trouble, but who asked the other party to be so arrogant? He couldn't tolerate this. This is the attitude you use when asking questions, he said indifferently. Hong Tianliang couldn't help but be stunned. Was this brat insulting him? There was actually someone who dared to oppose him? In reality, he wasn't an unreasonable person. As the grandson of Grand Tutor Hong, his upbringing was definitely top-notch. It was just that he stood too high, and he was always flattered by others, so it was inevitable that he had developed some bad habits. His expression became serious, and he said, "Sorry, I was too impatient." Ling Han was a bit surprised that the other party would actually apologize. It seemed that he could still be saved. He nodded and said, "The apology is accepted. You can leave now." Hong Tianliang nodded and strode forward, but after a few steps, he suddenly realized something. That wasn't right. Wasn't he asking the other party a question? Why was he leaving after apologizing? Realizing that something was wrong, Hong Tianliang suddenly turned around. His gaze swept past, and he saw the green gourd that was tied to Ling Han's waist. Although he hadn't seen the real vitality-nourishing gourd, he was focused on looking for it, so he instinctively thought in that direction. "You're Call Snow's companion," he said loudly. He couldn't be sure that this was a lie to Ling Han. Ling Han could have denied it, but what was he afraid of? "Wrong, not companion. She's my servant," he said indifferently. "So you're the one who killed the lake demon snake?" Hong Tianliang pointed at Ling Han. Ling Han frowned slightly. Why did the other party mention this? Was this snake raised by his family? "What does it have to do with you?" Ling Han asked. Hong Tianliang revealed a smile. Of course, he was now sure that the gourd tied to Ling Han's waist was the vitality-nourishing gourd that he had been searching for. Very good, he finally found it. "Hand over the gourd," he said indifferently. Ling Han had thought that the other party was strange. He was actually looking for Call Snow. Now that the other party said this, he could connect the dots. The other party's goal was the green gourd, but he couldn't find it in the lake, so he asked the 7 people lying by the lake. Because the 7 people had only seen Call Snow and Guqioling, the person Hong Tianliang was looking for became Call Snow. He smiled and said, "Why?" "Because if you don't give it to me, I'll beat you until you give it to me willingly," Hong Tianliang said confidently. When it came to martial arts strength, other than his brother who was so monstrous that he shouldn't exist in the world, he didn't think that anyone in the same cultivation level could compare to him. Ling Han laughed loudly. Shouldn't this kind of threat come from him? "All right, let's fight." He hooked his finger. Hong Tianliang didn't attack immediately. He just pretended to be pretentious and said, "Why bother? Give me the gourd now, and I can still be friends with you. Otherwise, you'll lose this favor and get beaten up. Has anyone told you that you'll get struck by lightning if you act pretentious?" Ling Han reminded him kindly. "Those are just weaklings with no strength," Hong Tianliang said indifferently. He was still acting pretentious. Ling Han smiled and said, "Why don't we make a bet? If I lose, this gourd will belong to you." Hong Tianliang put his hands behind his back and said, "I won't lose." "You really don't know how to chat. You seem to have the same effect as that idiot." Ling Han sighed. Chapter 3261. A Beautiful Romance. "Take this!" Hong Tianliang shouted, and had already begun his attack. Boom, his figure charged out, his speed extraordinarily fast, bringing with it a powerful sonic boom. He was indeed very powerful. Not mentioning anything else, just the wind brought about by this speed was enough to blow away an ordinary 12 meridians practitioner. However, against Ling Han, this was naturally far from enough. Ling Han's upper body did not move, but his legs moved swiftly backwards. Shio. His speed was also very terrifying. They had clearly not exchanged blows, but because Ling Han's speed was too fast, a shock wave formed behind him, hitting Hong Tianliang's body, instantly affecting him, and his figure involuntarily tilted. Hong Tianliang had no choice but to change his path, otherwise, with his current speed, he would be completely unable to maintain the correct path if he continued to withstand Ling Han's shock wave. He was surprised that Ling Han's speed could also reach such a level, and was not inferior to his own. Although this was far from reaching his highest speed, it had long since surpassed the speed that a 12 meridians practitioner should be able to achieve. This young man, who was even younger than him by a few years, really gave him a shock. "Take this." Hong Tianliang humphed, and struck out with a palm, pressing towards Ling Han. His power was released, and the force of his palm compressed the air, stacking layer upon layer, transforming into a large hand visible to the naked eye. Ling Han clenched his fist and punched out. Bam! The forces of both sides collided, but it was Ling Han's fist that shattered. He had underestimated the other. Ling Han had only used 150,000 gene of strength in this punch, and had not expected that he would not be able to defeat the other. Hong Tianliang, however, felt that this was only natural. He was a being with 20 meridians, and could step into the blood transformation realm at any time. His strength could reach 150,000 gene, and was a whole 5 times stronger than an ordinary illuminating pulse peak. "Your strength has actually reached 150,000 gene." He stopped, and said with a trace of admiration, "You should have opened all your hidden meridians, right?" From his point of view, an ordinary 20 meridians would only have a strength of 300,000 pounds. Unless it was a monster like him, who had opened up his meridians wider, allowing his secret power to flow faster, and cultivated a high-grade cultivation technique, allowing his secret power to become incomparably pure. Only then would he be able to achieve a terrifying strength of 500,000 pounds. But compared to that man, Hong Tianliang's heart twitched slightly. That person's peak physical strength had reached a terrifying 1 million kilograms. That was not inferior to ordinary experts at the 5 blood transformation realm. He was unable to imagine just how he had managed to cultivate such power. "I'll give you a chance. Submit to me, and I'll bring you onto a broader stage," he said. Ling Han rubbed his chin and smiled. "You can't give me the stage I want." TSK, what arrogance." Hong Tianliang stared blankly for a moment before snorting coldly, "That's not confidence, but arrogance. Come, let's see how strong you are." Ling Han was very interested. "You'll find out." Hong Tianliang roared, once again launching an attack. This time he increased the power of his attack by a bit. He hadn't dared to attack too fiercely before because he was afraid Ling Han was too weak. What if he killed Ling Han with a single palm? Although his grandfather was the grand tutor of the current dynasty, that didn't mean he could cover the sky with one hand. He definitely wouldn't have to pay with his life, but he would still be imprisoned for a few years. Ling Han also increased his power a bit, clashing head-on with his opponent. Bang! After this exchange, Hong Tianliang was once more shocked. How had he been blocked by Ling Han? He had clearly already increased his power to around 400,000 pounds. According to reason, Ling Han shouldn't have been able to block it. "So you were still holding back," he hatefully said. This bastard actually dared to look down on him. Filled with hatred, he couldn't help attacking with his full power. 200,000 pounds of power exploded out. It was extremely terrifying. Ling Han suppressed his cultivation level, and similarly exploded with a power of 250,000 kilograms, exchanging another blow with his opponent. Bang! Under the shock of the enormous power, Hong Tianliang's expression changed, and he looked at Ling Han in disbelief. He had used his full power, but the other had actually fought to a draw. "Had you been playing with me all this time? I have to admit, I really did underestimate you," he said solemnly. Ling Han only smiled slightly. However, in the end, you only came from a remote corner. Hong Tianliang's arms shook, emitting cracking sounds. 20 meridians can cultivate to a strength of 500,000 jin. There is no need to doubt your talent. However, your birth has determined your limitations. Again. His legs kicked out, exploding with astonishing speed. Peng, he almost reached the speed of sound as he punched towards Ling Han. Ling Han was shocked. The power of this punch definitely surpassed 500,000 pounds. Oh, he understood now. Hong Tianliang had indeed used his full power just now, but that was only a secret power. He had also trained in body arts. Now that the two kinds of power had burst out together, his power had once again been pushed to a new height. 600,000 pounds. Ling Han nodded inwardly. This was already comparable to when he had been at 20 meridians. Unfortunately, he didn't have 20 meridians now. He still returned a punch, incomparably calm. Hong Tianliang's punch was once again dispelled by Ling Han. Hong Tianliang was really dumbfounded this time. Although 600,000 pounds of power was still not his limit, the problem was, on what basis did Ling Han also have 600,000 pounds of power? And he even suspected that this might not be Ling Han's limit either. To think that you can also train your body. He gritted his teeth. Cultivation was a very easy matter. Even if one could not obtain the inheritance of a cultivation method, they could still step onto the path of cultivation by relying on fist techniques, leg techniques, and so on. And it didn't matter if one was poor. The heavens and earth were the most selfless, and everyone could use its power. However, body cultivators were different. This was very costly, very costly. Even a blood transformation realm family would not be able to afford it. Furthermore, there were different levels of body arts. For a pinnacle realm family, it could only be said to be for fun. His maximum strength was 800,000 pounds. If he used it alone, his secret power would be 200,000 pounds, and his physical strength would be 400,000 pounds. But if he used them together, the effect would not be 1 plus 1, but would be slightly inferior. After all, it was impossible to reach a perfect state when two different kinds of power were merged together. Apart from that monster of a brother of his. Now, Ling Han actually also had 600,000 pounds of power. This shocked him. A kid from a backwater village was too monstrous. I really don't believe it. Hong Tianliang exploded out once more. This time, he did not hold back. 800,000 pounds of power poured out in full force. Boom, this punch had the power to topple mountains and overturn seas. The power of body arts could not be underestimated. Ling Han was suddenly very curious. Now that he had also started body arts, his maximum strength had definitely broken through 1,000,000 pounds. How much was it exactly? As he thought of this, he also instinctively punched out. He could not control it, and it directly soared to 1,000,000 pounds of power. Chapter 3262. Xiao, Hong Tianliang was sent flying. Even though their fists did not directly collide, Ling Han's strength was too great. The remaining force was still enough to strike Hong Tianliang's body and easily send him flying. Peng, Hong Tianliang fell heavily onto the ground. However, even a force of around 200,000 jin wasn't enough to cause much harm to him. After all, his body refinement art had reached the small success realm. This little bit of damage wasn't a drizzle, but it wasn't very severe. He immediately got up, but his eyes were filled with shock as he looked at Ling Han. 1,000,000 jin of strength, he said in shock. You actually cultivated 1,000,000 jin of strength. Ling Han came back to his senses. It turned out that he had accidentally used too much strength. He smiled. Are you hurt? This kind of concern was simply a great humiliation. Hong Tianliang's chest heaved violently. Among those of the same level, other than his brother, who was so monstrous that he shouldn't exist in the world, he never thought that anyone could defeat him. But now, there was such a young man standing in front of him. A force of 1,000,000 jin. The meridian opening realm had two extremes. The first was 1,000,000 pounds of force. He hadn't reached that yet, but he was confident that as long as he obtained the Yuan nourishing gourd and nourished it for a year, He would definitely be able to reach that limit. As far as he knew, there were quite a few people in the capital who had reached this limit. For example, there were some monstrously talented princes and a few descendants of the 4 great commanders. However, the majority of them had already reached the blood transformation realm or even higher. The second limit was the strength of 1 million gene. This was too terrifying, because an ordinary 5th blood transformation only had this much power. It was impossible to reach such a height just by relying on arcane power. It was said that the limit of arcane power was 1 million kilograms of force. One must also undergo body cultivation to obtain 1 million kilograms of force. Moreover, one must perfectly fuse the two together. Only then would one be able to reach the second limit of 1 million kilograms. This was something that almost no one could achieve. Except for one person. His unearthly brother Ling Han shouldn't be able to reach 1 million kilograms of force, but breaking that boundary was already extremely shocking. He could even be called the number 1 person in the Meridian Opening realm. To think that I would meet a genius here. Hong Tianliang calmed down. Just so. Ling Han was very humble. You're just a. How can you call yourself a genius? Hong Tianliang had already controlled his emotions. He stared at Ling Han and said, if this was another situation, you might still be able to befriend me. But for the sake of this essence-nurturing gourd, I must fight for it. Energy-cultivating gourd. Ling Han nodded. That was the name of the green gourd. He smiled faintly and said, what makes you think you can defeat me? Battle strength doesn't just depend on strength. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a need for everyone to fight. Wouldn't it just be a competition of strength? Said Hong Tianliang. This was indeed reasonable. Power was only one aspect of battle prowess. Of course, it was also a very important aspect. It could even be said to be the most important aspect. Furthermore, my strength might not necessarily lose to yours, Hong Tianliang added. Ling Han was surprised. You haven't done your best. Hong Tianliang's face was filled with arrogance. He didn't reply to Ling Han's question. Instead, a red light surged on his body, and his veins bulged, instantly destroying his handsome appearance. Ling Han gave an "oh" and said, so you've activated your cultivation technique to unleash an outburst. Just like when he activated the Monkey King's cultivation technique, his strength would welcome a small outburst in a short period of time. His strength could even overlap to the 20th level. Of course, the time was very short. Hong Tianliang should be the same. That's right. Hong Tianliang humphed. I cultivate the Tiger King technique. It focuses on killing and can destroy everything. That was quite a nice way of putting it. Come, let me experience it. Ling Han said with a smile. You will. Hong Tianliang said. Then he suddenly pounced forward. Ping, his feet stomped on the ground. Under the outburst of strength, his speed instantly broke through the speed of sound. From Ling Han's perspective, it was very strange. Because Hong Tianliang's outburst was terrifying, but there was only silence on his side. He couldn't hear anything. The two of them were only separated by 3 or 4 feet. How long would it take to travel at the speed of sound? In just the blink of an eye, Hong Tianliang had already arrived. He struck out with his palm, drawing out a strange path. Somewhat interesting. Ling Han smiled lightly. He didn't use the demon monkey fist. It was just an ordinary punch, but it increased his strength by a lot. In addition to his physical strength, it should be at least 1.5 million gene. Peng 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 peng. Hong Tianliang clearly only struck out with his palm, but it formed more than 10 attacks. However, even so, he only barely dissipated the power of Ling Han's one punch. What? Hong Tianliang's mouth opened wide. Under the activation of his cultivation technique, the strength just now had already rushed to the first limit of 1 million gene. In addition to the stacking of the 14 layers of strength, even a third blood transfusion cultivator could be smashed to death by him. However, Ling Han only used one punch to dissipate it. Simple, ordinary, without the slightest bit of deliberate. Heavens, how strong was this guy's strength? 1.5 million gene. 1.5 million gene. This is your limit. Hong Tianliang panted. Ling Han thought about it. Although he hadn't activated the Monkey King's cultivation technique, he had indeed activated his original strength to the limit. As a result, he nodded. Not bad. Hong Tanliang was speechless. He had the confidence to charge to the first limit, but that was all. It was impossible for him to reach 5 million gene. I've lost, he said dejectedly. Although he had just said that being stronger did not mean that one's battle prowess was stronger, when one's strength reached a certain level, it would be a crushing advantage. For example, that attack just now. Ling Han didn't even need to use any techniques. Just a casual strike was enough to dissipate his explosive power. What else could he do? In terms of strength, there are only 3 or 4 people in the Meridian Opening realm who can stand shoulder to shoulder with you, he said. It wasn't that he wasn't strong, but that Ling Han's strength was too exaggerated. However, compared to that person, you are far inferior, Hong Tianliang added. This was a shadow in his heart, but it was also his pride. Oh! Ling Han's interest was piqued. That person reached 1 million gene of strength before stepping into the blood transformation realm, Hong Tianliang said word by word. His expression was extremely strange. There was admiration, jealousy, and disappointment. Even the Saint Emperor evaluated him as a heavenly genius when he found out. Ling Han smiled and asked, "Is that person your brother?" Hong Tianliang nodded and didn't say anything. Interesting. He was clearly his brother, but he even avoided mentioning his name. Ling Han could understand how much pressure he felt to have such a monstrous brother. That was because no matter how good or outstanding you were, you would pale in comparison to that person. What's your brother's name? Chapter 3264. Hong Tianliang's martial prowess was definitely one of the best in the Meridian Opening realm. No one doubted that. But now, he was actually being used as a cushion by someone else. How shocking was that? It could be said that defeating Hong Tianliang was already inconceivable. But he still dared to use Grand Tutor Hong's grandson, that person's brother, as a cushion. That was even more shocking. This was a peerless, ferocious person. But they actually wanted to rob such a peerless, ferocious person? Hiss, they must be tired of living. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "All right, come and try robbing me." All right, let's fight. Quite a few of them still hadn't recognized Hong Tianliang. After all, who would believe that he would be used as a cushion? They were all eager to try. Bastards! That big brother immediately flipped out, kicking and stomping on his subordinates. Only then did he turn to Ling Han. "Master, it's my subordinates who don't know any better. Please don't take it to heart." Why did Big Brother change from arrogance to deference? Understood. It had to be Big Brother's scheme. He was first careless and then waiting for a chance to strike. Damn, as expected of their big brother. All the lackeys thought this way in their hearts, and their admiration for their boss immediately rose like a torrential river, unending and unending. Ling Han looked at this boss and said indifferently, "Then you mean you won't rob me?" No, how would I dare?" That boss hurriedly shook his head, cold sweat pouring down his face. TCH, boss's acting skills were amazing. All the subordinates thought this, feeling even more reverence for their boss. Ling Han shook his head. "How can that be? We have to keep our word. We said we were going to rob, so we can't give up halfway." "Master, I was wrong." That boss knelt down. He really couldn't provoke someone who dared to use Hong Tianliang as a cushion. Even if they couldn't kill people here, it wasn't like they were going to stay here forever. Boss's sacrifice was a bit too great. Did he have to do this to confuse his opponent? They looked at each other, seeing the difficulty in each other's eyes. If it was them, they definitely wouldn't make such a sacrifice. "Boss, you're so great." They were all prepared to attack and were just waiting for their boss to suddenly attack. Ling Han laughed. "Are you really not going to rob me anymore?" The boss shook his head like a rattledrum. "I don't dare." "Absolutely not." Ling Han nodded. "Since you're not going to rob me, then let's go. You're not going to extort money from me, are you? Let's go. Let's go." The boss let out a sigh of relief. It would be great if they could escape unscathed like this. He crawled to his feet, waved his hand, and said, "Hurry up and scram." All the lackeys were at a loss. Didn't they say that they would first confuse the opponent before attacking? The delusion was successful, but why didn't he do it? "What are you still standing around for? Hurry up and scram," shouted the boss. Were they trying to make trouble for him? It had been so difficult for this peerless expert to let them leave. Although the subordinates didn't understand, they had to listen to their boss, so they left with him. Ling Han could not help smiling. He did not expect that Hong Tianliang still had some use. If Hong Tianliang were to learn of this, he would probably vomit blood. Was the value of his life just to intimidate a few hooligans? The night passed, and the next day, Ling Han and Huan Xue continued on their way. The unlucky Hong Tianliang was still lying there. With his physique, he wouldn't catch a cold even if he stayed in the cold for a night. Ling Han studied the gourd again and found that the mysterious energy had returned, and it had reached a rather dense level. He understood that as long as there were no living things, the gourd would produce nourishing energy. But as soon as there were living things, the energy would begin to nourish them until it was exhausted. No wonder it was called the Qi-nurturing gourd. Unfortunately, Ling Han was not Hong Tianliang. His photon computer could not connect to the internet, so he could not find any more information about the gourd. The two of them continued to wander. This region was very large, and it was inevitable that they would be robbed. In the end, they were the ones who robbed others, and Ling Han was able to obtain more and more red cloud gems. The third day, the fourth day, the fifth day. Time passed quickly, and as it gradually approached the end of the selection, the participants became more and more frenzied, and there were more and more cases of attacks between each other. Ling Han naturally did not care. He was now absolutely invincible in the illuminating pulse realm. Even if Hong Tianliang and Gu Qiuling, who had opened 20 meridians, worked together, he would not be afraid. Even 10 of them would not be enough. He was studying the gourd, and he would enter it to cultivate every day. He found that although the energy within could be used for cultivation, it was actually more beneficial to the improvement of spiritual power. Qi nurturing qi was to nurture the primordial spirit. Ling Han could not help but be pleasantly surprised. Up until now, there were many methods to improve secret power and temper the physique. There was no lack of pills and natural treasures. The only difference was that they were a little more expensive. However, were there any cultivation techniques to improve spiritual power? Treasure fruits were even more priceless. He had only been able to obtain a mystical cloud fruit after obtaining first place in the Hidden Tiger City competition. The gourd could strengthen spiritual power. It was definitely a supreme treasure. Hong Tianliang probably did not know much about it. He only thought that the gourd could nourish the body and raise the level of life. He had no idea that it was targeted at the consciousness. There was no need to tell him. Ling Han was very satisfied. Currently, spiritual power could only be used in alchemy and formation Dao, but he had a feeling that martial art had just begun to sprout. In the future, there would definitely be more widespread uses for it. On the 7th day, the 8th day, and on the 9th day, the people became even more frenzied, completely losing their reason. Originally, the weak did not dare to attack the strong, but now such things were happening all the time. Some used ambushes, some weak teamed up. In short, there were battles everywhere. Ling Han and Huan Xue came to the foot of a mountain. There was a sign erected here, which said, "Danger ahead, no entry." "Young master, let's turn back." Huan Xue was very timid. This was determined by her birth, and her horizons had not been broadened. Ling Han, however, was very interested. He said, "It's fine. The rules of the selection didn't say that we can't go anywhere, so there's no harm in going in and taking a look. But young master, it's very dangerous inside," Huan Xue said in a low voice. She was worried about safety, but she did not dare to disobey her young master. "If there is danger, we can still hide in the gourd. There's no need to be afraid." Since Ling Han was interested, how could he be dissuaded by a few words? Huan Xue could only nod. She had never had her own opinions. The two of them stepped over the sign and walked up the mountain. They did not see anything strange along the way, which made Huan Xue gradually feel relieved. That could be someone's prank. However, Ling Han revealed a solemn expression. Chapter 3265. Ling Han sensed a very obscure aura that was extremely powerful. It should be the ultimate bone realm, he thought. Wait here first, he said in a low voice. The best thing about Snowcaller was that she wouldn't ask too many questions and only nodded obediently. Ling Han extended his body and walked up the mountain. His footsteps were light and almost didn't make a single sound. After a short while, he arrived at the top of the mountain. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. A loud snoring sound traveled over like thunder. Ling Han slowed down his steps. He knew that the ultimate bone realm was too powerful. Even though it was sleeping so soundly now, it would immediately wake up at the slightest movement. He looked over and couldn't help but be surprised because the existence that was snoring was actually a dog. The fat dog's entire body was almost perfectly round. Its fur was so black that it glowed as if it had been smeared with oil. This dog's body was very big, but it wasn't at the level of a giant. It was about the size of a water buffalo. Now it was snoring loudly. A tongue was sticking out, and as it breathed, there was actually a bubble above its nostrils that continuously expanded and shrunk. One couldn't help but be curious when this bubble would explode. Such a fat dog, could it be at least in the ultimate bone realm? If this was a female dog, could he let the big black dog tempt it? This thought flashed through Ling Han's mind. However, he immediately laughed in spite of himself. Even if the large black dog could be released, and even if it really was a female dog, with the large black dog's despicable nature, which female dog would be interested in it? Forget it. He scanned again. He found a tree beside this fat dog. This tree was very short, only half a person's height, but it grew very well. The crown of the tree was shaped like a hemisphere. The most important thing was that the leaves on it were actually all different. Some were like swords, some like knives, some like spears. There were all kinds of them. When the wind blew, these leaves even made a clanking sound, as if there were really weapons colliding with each other. Instinctively, Ling Han thought that this was a treasure tree. That was why there was a powerful demon dog guarding it. The warning sign at the bottom clearly indicated that the Emperor Capital Academy knew of the existence of this fat dog. Of course, they wouldn't have missed this strange treasure tree. Perhaps, this demon dog was raised by the Academy. Although the relationship between demonic beasts and humans was not very good, it was still possible for human experts to tame demonic beasts as battle pets to guard their homes. The problem was, the watchdog was just lying there. How could he get close? Ling Han did not think that he would be able to get close to a paramount bone demon dog without being discovered, even if it was sleeping soundly. I got it. He retreated and explained the plan to the little maid. Young master, isn't this too dangerous? Summon Snow's face was pale. That was a paramount bone realm demonic beast. It could easily bite her young master to death. Don't worry. Ling Han comforted her. The little pink pig grinned coldly. It actually hoped that Ling Han would be eaten by a demonic beast. Before it could gloat for long, it felt a weight on its neck and was lifted up by Ling Han. You're coming with me. Goo. The perverted pig squealed. Naturally, it was unwilling. How could Ling Han pay any attention to it? He first hid the origin nurturing bottle gourd in a secluded place, and then carried out the test. When he ran close to it, he used his mind to communicate with it. Xiao. His body immediately disappeared from where it was. If anyone were to see this, they would definitely scream out loud. In reality, Ling Han had entered the inner space of the essence nurturing gourd. Perverted pig, cooperate. Otherwise, I'll throw you outside to be eaten by a dog, Ling Han said to Perverted Pig as he came out of the gourd. It didn't enter the gourd with him. Perverted Pig nodded unwillingly. It wasn't that it was afraid of being eaten by a demonic beast, but if it was taken away by a demonic beast, where could it find a pretty sister? Done. Ling Han nodded. He brought Perverted Pig just in case. This could intimidate demonic beasts, although he didn't know if it would have any effect on Paramount Bone Realm beasts. After arranging Summon Snow, Ling Han prepared to act. His plan was very simple. He would use himself as bait to attract the demonic dog to chase him. Summoned Snow would take the opportunity to pluck the leaves. As for Ling Han, he ran near the essence-nurturing gourd and directly entered it. If the fat dog caught up to him in advance, he would use Perverted Pig to threaten it. Hopefully, this fat pig would be able to show its might. Xiao, he threw out a stone. It heavily smashed into the ground, causing a loud sound. That fat dog didn't even move. If not for the bubbles still coming out of its nose, people would really suspect that it was dead. It's fine if a pig is this lazy. After all, it's a pig. But how can a dog be this lazy? Ling Han muttered. Perverted Pig was indignant and bared its fangs at him. You're not allowed to look down on pigs like this. Ling Han threw another stone. This time, he directly aimed at the demonic dog. Pa! The stone smashed over, but when it touched the demonic dog's body, it suddenly exploded into pieces. So powerful! Ling Han was shocked. The blood chi of the blood transformation realm soared to the heavens. This ultimate bone realm was even more awesome. The aura that seeped out of their bodies was so terrifying that even rocks could be shattered. No wonder this demonic dog was sleeping so soundly. Then could he walk over and pluck the leaves? Ling Han considered this tempting thought. His feet involuntarily moved, and he quietly approached that fat dog. Very good, this fellow didn't react at all. Summoned Snow watched from afar in astonishment. This wasn't going according to their plan. Ling Han was already less than 10 feet away from the fat dog, but the dog was still snoring loudly. Very good. Keep it up, good dog. Ling Han walked to the side of the tree and carefully examined it. In just an instant, he could determine that there were a total of 999 leaves on this tree. And each leaf was in the shape of a weapon. They were all swords, but there were also short swords, long swords, curved swords, hooked swords, and so on. Ling Han had a strange feeling. Why did these leaves really seem to be able to grow into weapons? What a curious tree. He was just about to pluck a leaf to study when he suddenly discovered that something was wrong. Where was the snoring sound? He abruptly turned around, but he was shocked, because the fat dog had actually stood up at some point and was staring at him. When it saw him turn around, it opened its mouth and spat out a long tongue, saliva flowing out of it. Fuck, so embarrassing. Ling Han chuckled and then suddenly made a move. Goo! The pig let out a miserable cry. Because it had been forcefully stuffed into the big dog's mouth by Ling Han. Then, Ling Han broke into a run. Using the flying shuttle steps, he instantly exploded with terrifying speed. Pung! A sonic boom exploded, forming a terrifying shock wave that caused the dog's fur to dance wildly. That fat dog was startled. This kind of change had also greatly exceeded its expectations. But it also immediately turned around and ran in pursuit of Ling Han. Goo! The pig let out a miserable cry. It was still in the dog's mouth, bastard. Chapter 3266. After running a few steps, the fat dog also realized that it was somewhat uncomfortable to stuff a pig in its mouth. Although the suckling pig wasn't big, its body wasn't that big either. After stuffing a small suckling pig into its mouth, its upper jaw was stuck up high, almost blocking its eyes. It bit down hard, wanting to bite the small pig into pieces and use it as a snack. However, when it bit down hard, it found that the pig was surprisingly flexible. Although its teeth bit down, they didn't penetrate the pig's body. Instead, they immediately bounced back. What was going on? The fat dog was a little confused. It was a ultimate bone realm existence, but it couldn't bite a small suckling pig to pieces. It bit again, but it was still useless. After a few bites, it had to admit that it really couldn't bite through this guy in its mouth. How could it chase like this? It hurriedly coughed and spat out the small suckling pig. The little lascivious pig immediately began to whine, its fury overflowing. On one hand, it scolded Ling Han for not being loyal, and on the other hand, it scolded this stupid dog for being blind, even daring to bite it. Just wait, after it left, it would eat dog meat every day until it vomited. The big fat dog stared at the pig. It was actually full of interest in this pig, but after thinking about it, it was better to capture the guy who wanted to steal the leaves first. After all, this was the Academy's territory, and this guy actually dared to steal things. It had to capture him. When it thought of a certain person's leather whip, it couldn't help but tremble. It didn't want to be beaten. It spread its forelegs and chased after Ling Han. Call Snow was dumbfounded. This seemed to be going according to plan. The big fat dog went to chase the young master, but she still felt that something was wrong. She hurriedly ran out, first to pick up a few leaves, then ran over to pick up the small suckling pig and ran away. This big fat dog would be back soon. They had to leave as soon as possible, or they would definitely be in big trouble. Ling Han ran. Although he started first, and the big dog was delayed for a moment, its speed was still very fast, even faster than when he used the shuttle steps. Looking back, he saw that it was rapidly approaching. This was almost twice the speed of sound. Seeing that half a minute was almost up, Ling Han realized that he was far from reaching his limit. Otherwise, he would have felt his whole body heating up, especially his legs, as if they were about to explode. This was the result of his body tempering. His physique had become stronger, and the limits of what he could endure had naturally risen as well. Even so, the big fat dog was getting closer and closer. It wouldn't be long before it caught up to him. Fuck, weren't you so lazy that you couldn't even wake up from being hit by a rock? How did you suddenly wake up? You're obviously so lazy, so why are you running so fast? Speaking of which, is all your fat for show? How can you still run so fast? Ling Han cursed in his heart. He was about to be caught, but he was only a short distance away from the essence nourishing gourd. He activated the Monkey King's technique, and his speed suddenly increased. Pung, he reached about 1.5 times the speed of sound, and the big fat dog's approaching speed immediately slowed down. The big fat dog let out a snort. There was no way it would let this thief escape. It stretched out its claws and slapped at Ling Han. The distance was close enough. However, right at this moment, swoosh, the dog's eyes blurred, and Ling Han's figure was already nowhere to be seen. What was going on? The big fat dog hurriedly stopped and arched its nose to search everywhere. However, the little thief's aura was cut off and disappeared in front of it. This was too strange. It searched around but found nothing. Returning to its original spot, it sat down on its butt and scratched its neck with its claws. Its heart was full of confusion. Forget it, so be it. In any case, nothing was stolen by that little thief. As long as it didn't say anything, it would pretend that nothing had happened. As the saying went, it was better to have less trouble. Going home and sleeping was the most convenient. This fat dog's lazy attribute had the upper hand. Moreover, it also wanted to study that little suckling pig. It clearly sensed any energy fluctuations, and how its skin was so thick that it could even block its sharp teeth. It trotted all the way back. Where's the pig? Looking at that short tree again, it couldn't help but be dumbfounded. 13 leaves were missing. Looking at the traces of plucking, they were still very fresh. Obviously, they had been plucked away after it left. Not good, it had fallen into the trap of luring the tiger, no, luring the dog away from the mountain. When it thought of a certain person's whip, it couldn't help but tuck its tail between its legs. Hiss, should it consider digging a hole and hiding for a few days? After the big fat dog left, Ling Han hurriedly came out of the vitality-nurturing gourd and immediately ran down the mountain to meet up with Huan Shui. If that fat dog suddenly became intelligent and squatted at the place where he had disappeared, things would be very bad. Young master. When she saw Ling Han, Huan Shui finally heaved a sigh of relief. She hurriedly took out 13 leaves and handed them to Ling Han. Because time was tight, she had only plucked these few. Ling Han put the 12 leaves into the gourd and only took out one to study. The Academy had sent a paramount bone realm demonic beast to guard this tree, so it definitely couldn't be an ordinary item. However, in a short period of time, Ling Han could only come to one conclusion, and that was that the leaves themselves were extremely tough and he couldn't tear them. Just this point alone was enough to prove that these leaves were extraordinary. I'd better wait until I get out and connect to the internet before I investigate. He kept the leaves and began his robbery plan. With his luck attribute at work, he could always meet people who were blind enough to take the initiative to rob him. He didn't even need to look for them himself. Then, the number of red cloud gems he had increased, almost reaching 100. Finally, the 10-day deadline was up. Everyone was sent out by the array and appeared on the square again. Most of them sighed. They didn't get a single red cloud gem, and obviously had no fate to enter Emperor Capital Academy. Those who have red cloud gems stay. The rest of you leave immediately. An extremely dignified old man from the academy said loudly. His voice was loud and clear, so loud that it hurt people's ears. The crowd started to leave, leaving only a few people behind. The people from the academy counted and couldn't help but have strange expressions. Their original intention was to pick out the 100 people who had the most red cloud gems, but there were only 79 people in front of them. Then as long as they verified whether they all had red cloud gems, they would be able to pass and enter Emperor Capital Academy. Take out your red cloud gems, the old man said. According to those who knew him, his name was Pan Tianyu, a senior instructor of the academy. He was famous for his fiery temper, and he was a paramount bone realm cultivator. Therefore, don't make him angry, or you would definitely be beaten up for nothing. Everyone took out their respective red cloud gems, ranging from 1 to 4 or 5. Even someone like Gu Qiuling, who had 20 veins, had only obtained 12 red cloud gems. Hong Tianliang had even less, with only 9. He had been robbed by Ling Han, so of course he wouldn't have a lot of red cloud gems. Pan Tianyu was surprised. This number wasn't right. This time, the academy had clearly put in 300 red cloud gems. Could it be that there were still more than half that hadn't been discovered? Chapter 3268. Ling Han believed that his halo of hatred would definitely take effect and bring him trouble, but he was not afraid. Instead, he treated it as a form of entertainment. However, before this could take effect, Ling Han was called out to him. On the first day of school for new students, there would be a lecture as usual. Everyone was summoned to the martial arts field. The ground here was made of sand. Even if a paramount bone realm cultivator fought, there was no need to worry about damage. At most, they could just fill in the sand after the battle. There were not only 79 new students, but about 100. Because there were also blood transformation realm new students, they did not need to be screened and directly entered the academy. Flag Master Lien. Ling Han's eyes lit up when he saw Lien Shuerong. Lien Shuerong also saw him and nodded. I knew I would definitely see you here. Ling Han laughed. Although he believed in Lien Shuerong's strength, the beast tide was too terrifying. He was naturally worried. Only now did he finally relax after seeing Lien Shuerong. The two of them were probably the only two survivors of the black-green flags. They were very sad when they talked about the situation that day. Ling Han. Someone walked over. It was Tuoba Tianhuang. He had not been screened, but he had appeared here. This could only mean one thing. He had broken through to the blood transformation realm. Ling Han nodded. Long time no see. Tuoba Tianhuang was silent for a moment. You have to break through to the blood transformation realm as soon as possible. I want to fight with you again. At the same age and realm, he had only lost to Ling Han. This was a stain on his record that he wanted to erase. Ling Han smiled. The capital is full of hidden dragons and crouching tigers. There are many geniuses. There's no need to target me, right? He was not afraid to fight. Instead, he wanted to give face to the other party since they were both from Hidden Tiger City. He did not want to be traumatized by 2 defeats and never be able to recover. Tuoba Tianhuang smirked coldly and said, Ling Han, could it be that you are afraid? Ling Han sighed. Why didn't he accept his good intentions? All right, since you want to fight, why don't we do it today? He said lightly. I won't bully you. I'll let you use only one hand. Tuoba Tianhuang almost lost his breath. You, a meridian opening expert, wanted to fight me, but you wanted to use a single hand? Although he had just entered the blood transformation realm, because he had cultivated 20 meridians in the illuminating pulse realm, his first transformation's battle strength was comparable to that of an ordinary third transformation. This is something Ling Han can compare to. You're too arrogant, he said coldly. Fine, I'll teach you a lesson first. I'll let you know the difference in cultivation levels. Defeating Ling Han by suppressing him in terms of cultivation level would naturally not make him happy, but he was truly enraged and wanted to teach Ling Han a lesson. Just as the two of them were about to make their move, they saw someone from the academy arrive. This time, a vice dean had come. His name was Sui Tang and he was at the Extreme Bone Realm. However, it was unclear which stage he was at. With this, Ling Han and Tuoba Tianhuang naturally could not fight anymore. The two of them returned to their own teams. Sui Tang gave a speech, the gist of which was to welcome the arrival of the new students. He hoped that they would work hard in their cultivation in the following period of time, because if the Illuminating Pulse realm could not break through to the Blood Transformation realm within 5 years, they would be expelled from the academy. The Blood Transformation realm had a 10-year deadline. If they did not break through to the Extreme Bone realm, they would have to leave. Therefore, the academy's disciples could not be over 40 years old. Sui Tang spoke a lot. At the beginning, everyone listened attentively, but because there were too many meaningless things, most of them became absent-minded. Only Gu Qiuling straightened his back from the beginning to the end, and did not make any small movements. All right, dismissed. Sui Tang finally announced that the lecture was over. He waved his hand and left. The students did not leave immediately, because for many of them, it was their first time meeting. Naturally, they had to get to know each other. After all, they would be living together for a long time in the future. It was fine if they could not become friends, but they could not become enemies. Some people were smooth and slick, like fish in water, while others were wooden and did not know how to socialize. Ling Han was just about to leave with Huan Shui when he saw Tuoba Tianhuang blocking his path. Want to run? Tuoba Tianhuang said disdainfully. Ling Han shook his head. He had not placed Tuoba Tianhuang in his eyes at all. So after the gathering ended, he had naturally left to focus on tempering his body. He wanted to quickly raise his physical strength to the level of 1,000,000 kilograms and then break through to the blood transformation realm. He hadn't expected Tuoba Tianhuang to insist on coming over to be slapped in the face. Fine, I'll help you. Make your move. Ling Han placed his right hand behind his back. If you can force me to use my right hand, then I'll consider it your win. Tuoba Tianhuang couldn't help exploding with rage. His eyes glared as if they were about to spit fire. You're too arrogant. He clenched his teeth. Is that so? Ling Han laughed. You've already been defeated by me, so it's not too much for me to use only one hand. Damn it. Tuoba Tianhuang roared in fury as he charged toward Ling Han. Bang. Who would have thought that someone would suddenly appear out of nowhere and block this attack for Ling Han? However, that person was clearly not a match for Tuoba Tianhuang, and he was sent flying. It was Gu Qiuling. If you want to exchange blows with my big brother, you'll first have to pass me. He crawled up, not the slightest cowardice. With this fight, the others all looked over. After knowing the situation, they all laughed and watched the show from the side. The academy didn't prohibit fighting as long as you didn't kill or cripple someone. But for a meridian opening expert to take the initiative to attack a blood transformation expert was strange. Was he asking for a beating? Furthermore, the other meridian opening expert was also arrogant enough. He actually said he would only use one hand. That was even more shocking. Where did his courage come from? One was arrogant, one was foolish. These two had actually passed the selection and entered the Imperial Capital Academy. That was practically lowering the academy's standard. Tuoba Tianhuang snorted, "You're not my match. Break through to the blood transformation realm first." Gu Qiuling still wanted to say something, but he was stopped by Ling Han. He wants to challenge me. Don't steal his business. Ling Han smiled. Gu Qiuling didn't understand. Whose business am I stealing? Who's doing business? He was starting to get serious again. Ling Han ignored him. Instead, he looked at Tuoba Tianhuang and said, "Come." Don't tell me you're getting someone to help you again? Tuoba Tianhuang's expression was disdainful. Before Ling Han could reply, someone really did interfere. It was Lian Shuerong. She raised her hand and said, "We're all from Hidden Tiger City. We should work together and not fight amongst ourselves." Tuoba Tianhuang was still a bit wary of Lian Shuerong. She was already at the 3rd transformation at such a young age. Although she wasn't as talented as him, she could still be considered a genius. He explained, Flag Master Lien, I just want to teach him a lesson so he won't be too arrogant. Otherwise, with his flamboyant nature, he'll cause trouble sooner or later. At that time, he'll lose face for Hidden Tiger City. Reading on the phone. Chapter 3269. With Lien Shuerong's intervention, the fight did not happen. Tuoba Tianhuang left hatefully and even gave Ling Han a disdainful look. He would teach Ling Han a lesson sooner or later. In his eyes, Ling Han was just a flash in the pan. He had already opened all 20 meridians and broken through to the blood transformation realm, but Ling Han was still in the illuminating pulse realm. It should be known that the two of them were about the same level previously, both having opened 3 hidden meridians. The difference was already obvious. Thus, Tuoba Tianhuang no longer saw Ling Han as a competitor. All he wanted was to defeat Ling Han at the same level and completely erase the humiliation from before. Ling Han smiled faintly, not minding it at all. However, he had thought that it would be difficult for the two of them to cross paths again. In the end, they actually lived in the same district. They really would meet frequently. Forget it. At most, I'll just beat him up. He'll be obedient after that. The academy arranged accommodation based on the time of entry. Thus, those living in the same district were both at the blood transformation realm and the illuminating pulse realm. Nanshin district. Those who lived here were basically the older students who had entered 3 years ago. Brother Yang, the new students have arrived today. Should we quickly absorb them into the gang? A green-robed man asked. The person he was asking about was Hu Yang, the boss of the Hu family gang. This Hu family corresponded to one of the 3 dukes of the imperial court, Hu Yunfeng. Although he was not as powerful as the 4 marshals, Senior Tutor Hong, or the chief of staff, he belonged to the 2nd tier and could not be underestimated. Thus, the Hu family had formed their own faction and did not rely on the 4 marshals or Senior Tutor Hong. They had strong ambitions and wanted to compete with these strong people in the future. Hu Yang nodded and said, although these people do not have any background, being able to enter the academy means that their talent in martial art is not bad. They have a bright future. After all, we can't compare to the King Kong gang and Hengtian gang. Let's not consider quality for now. Later, we'll first give the new students a show of strength and scare them. Then, we'll absorb them into the gang. No one should dare to say no. However, Brother Yang, there's someone from the Hong family among the newcomers, the man in green reminded. A hint of fear flashed in Hu Yang's eyes. He thought of that frightening fellow. He had entered the academy at the age of 13, and by the age of 15, he had already become a celebrity in the academy. By the age of 19, he had already become the #1 expert in the academy, and had also allowed the Hong family to become so strong that they occupied half of the academy. Fortunately, this monstrous genius had long since stepped into the ultimate bone realm and left the academy. Otherwise, the academy would have been the Hong family gang's domain, and no one would be able to compete with them. It's fine. As long as we don't touch Hong Tianliang, it will be fine, Hu Yang said. He paused for a moment, then said, call all the brothers. Let's go. Compared to the 4 great marshals, Grand Tutor Hong, and the elders, the Hu clan could only be considered a rising power. Hu Yunfeng was still at the 5th stage of the extreme bone realm and was working hard to break through to the engravement realm. He wanted to enter the 1st echelon as soon as possible. Correspondingly, Hu Yang was also working hard to expand the influence of the Hu family in the academy. This was because the disciples that came out of the academy in the future would play a role in various corners of the imperial court. The role of middle-level officials was actually very important. Hu Yang quickly gathered over 10 people. Most of them were at the blood transformation realm, and Hu Yang himself was at the 5th blood transformation. He was already 35 years old. Originally, if he had used his full strength to break through to the ultimate bone realm, he would have already broken through. But after him, there was currently no one in the Hu family who could carry the banner. So he had temporarily slowed down the speed of his breakthrough, doing his best to stay in the academy for a few more days. Under his lead, the 10 people swaggered into the Qingyun region. This was where the new students lived. In the future, There would be many more new students living here until this place was full. "Newcomers, come out!" shouted the azure-robed man. He was Hu Yang's capable subordinate, and his name was Su Yuliang. His father was also Hu Yunfeng's trusted aide, and he was a few years younger than Hu Yang. If Hu Yang was unable to suppress his realm and had to break through, then he would temporarily hold up the banner of the Hu family gang. Su Yuliang had a cultivation base of 3 meridians. His roar shook the entire Qingyun region. "Who is it?" The new students all walked out. They thought the academy was summoning them for some sort of meeting. 10, 30, 70. More and more people came out. Most of them were completely dumbfounded. Had something happened? Su Yuliang looked over and didn't wait for everyone to arrive. He loudly said, "This is Brother Hu Yang. Those who don't know, listen carefully. Brother Hu Yang's father is one of the 3 dukes, Hu Yunfeng." Everyone was shocked by his words. They might not have heard of Hu Yang before, but it was impossible for Hu Yunfeng, one of the 3 ducal ministers, to not know of him. He was an important official of the imperial court and an ultimate bone realm expert. "Newcomers, there are rules you must follow upon entering the academy." Su Yuliang swept his gaze over the crowd. Seeing everyone's faces were filled with reverence, he smiled, enjoying this kind of reverence. "Everyone sit down." He suddenly roared, and the aura of the 3rd transformation surged out, causing the majority of people's faces to turn pale. Everyone sat down, but there were still quite a few who didn't listen. For example, Tuoba Tianhuang and Lian Shuang. They were both blood transformation existences, so who was afraid of who? As for the meridian opening realm, there were only Hong Tianliang and Guqioling. Because Ling Han was still cultivating in his room, he acted as if he hadn't heard them. On the other hand, it was Huan Xue who came out with the little pink pig. With her personality, she naturally wouldn't resist. Hong Tianliang disdainfully smiled. Compared to the Hong family, the Hu family wasn't even worth a fart, and the Hu family gang was nothing in front of the Hong family gang. He turned and left. Seeing Hong Tianliang leave, someone else also tried to imitate him, but he was immediately beaten back. That person was unwilling to accept this. "Why can he leave but I can't?" "Because he's Hong Tianliang." That one sentence was enough to force him back. "Oh, looks like my words don't work. Some people don't listen," sneered Su Yuliang. His gaze swept over Lian Shuerong, Tuoba Tianhuang and the others, but he didn't get angry. He just so happened to need a troublemaker to establish his might. That way, once he flattened these troublemakers, others would naturally feel reverence, and his might would be established. "Boring." Tuoba Tianhuang sneered and turned his head. Su Yuliang immediately leaped forward, pouncing at Tuoba Tianhuang. When he arrived behind him, he spread his fingers, grabbing at his shoulder. Scram! Tuoba Tianhuang snorted and fiercely turned his head. Boom! A terrifying power exploded out. This palm was both fast and fierce. Bang! Su Yuliang was immediately pushed back, and Tuoba Tianhuang was also pushed back. He staggered a few times. "Oh!" Hu Yang's eyes brightened. He had the information of every new student. With his ability, it naturally wasn't hard for him to obtain it, so he knew that Tuoba Tianhuang was only at the 1st transformation and had just broken through. A 1st transformation could match a 3rd transformation. That wasn't simple. A genius. He was definitely going to have this genius. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.